Hello and welcome to Cleave to Antiquity. My name is Ben. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Father Stephen DeYoung. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yep, my pleasure. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited for this one. This should be a fun Q&A stream. So for those that are watching that are unfamiliar with who you are, you mind introducing yourself and what you do?
So when I'm putting on airs, I'm the very Reverend Dr. Stephen DeYoung. I'm the pastor of Archangel Gabriel Orthodox Church here in Lafayette, Louisiana. I've got a PhD in biblical studies. I've got master's degrees in a bunch of related things. The author of 6 books. Most well-known one's probably Religion of the Apostles. Most recent one is called The Baal Book, subtitled A Biography of the Devil. So that's the most metal one, if that's how you choose what books to buy. And I'm the co-host of the Lord of Spirits podcast. My parish Bible study is circulated as the Whole Counsel of God podcast. I'm a Marvel Rivals Twitch streamer, gold medal winning ballroom dancer.
Nice. quite the resume there.
Yeah, probably covers it.
Yeah, I did see you do a little bit of gaming on your channel. That's pretty. Yes. That's pretty fun. I usually don't, to be completely candid, I haven't watched the gaming streams. You usually talk theology while you game, or what's the format?
Yeah, on my Twitch stream, I play Marvel Rivals and just do open Q&A.
Nice. That's awesome.
Theological questions and stuff. So
that's a good kind of gimmick there. It's kind of like Redeem Zoomer does the Minecraft streams.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen those? Or he's like going around?
I've heard he does them. Yeah, I've heard he does them. But yeah, it's a different group of folks than maybe who are connecting with other stuff I do. So
right. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to do this one. So this is going to be a Q&A stream. So for those that are watching, pretty much what this is going to be, if you want to send in questions, send them in with a Q in front, and I'll star those questions and we'll get to them in the order that they're received, unless I get one from an inquirer. So let me know where you're at in the comments. If you're Orthodox already, if you're a Protestant, you're inquiring into Orthodoxy, so on and so forth, let me know where you're at, so that way I can kind of prioritize this a little bit. And then again, just to thank those who have sent super chats in, I'll prioritize those. But over the super chat ones, I want to make sure the inquirer questions all get answered, because that is the purpose of the stream. I want this to be a good service for y'all to answer your questions if you're interested into Orthodoxy. So with that being said, let me
give one warning first.
Yeah,
I saw you had Jay on last week, and he was really nice to people who are asking questions, and I'm not nice like Jay. I'm a mean person.
There you go.
So if you come to me with low IQ stuff, I got to warn you, younger folks, I'm Gen X. I will hurt your feelings.
There you go.
I will cause emotional damage to Zoomers with my words if you approach incorrectly. So that's a warning proviso out there.
Yeah. Not St. Matthew says in another month there won't be any Orthodox Christians left for you to have on the stream. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of people out there. I'm trying to, I am kind of thinking about it though. I'm like, I'm gonna have to start doing some repeats here in a bit. If I keep going the pace I'm going with these.
Well, when you get to the patriarchs, right?
Yeah,
you can go through the canonical patriarchs.
Yeah, there you go. I'll have to start. I'm just working my way up the ladder with guests. That'd be terrifying. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. I agree. I have a severe case of episcopophobia, so I think that's healthy.
Yeah, I think I'd be sweating the whole time. Okay. This question is. Oh no, not that one. I'm so sorry.
Your beatitude with my apologies.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that'd be awesome. All right, let's dive into some of these. So go ahead, if you want to send in your questions, send them in with a Q in front, and I'm going to start starring these. We'll get to them in the order that they're received. All right, so let's see. Loading asks, how should Orthodox eschatology shape daily life? How do we balance deliberately withdrawing near monasteries or rural areas with engaging the world?
Yeah, so I'm thinking this is eschatology in the sense in which it's more commonly used in Protestantism. Most commonly in Orthodox writings, when people refer to eschatology, so this is something, if you're reading Orthodox texts, you need to get used to. They're going to be talking about what happens to the soul after death. Whereas in Protestant circles, eschatology is more often used to talk about the end of the world. Right. And those, not that those aren't related, right? The judgment of the soul and the last judgment are obviously directly related. But yeah, I think we need to have the long historical perspective that Orthodoxy has. That's one of the virtues of Orthodoxy, is that Orthodoxy thinks and does things in centuries, not like years or decades. A lot of civilizations have collapsed in the history of the Orthodox Christian Church, right? The western half of the Roman Empire, eventually the eastern half of the Roman Empire, Christian North Africa was wiped out essentially by Islamic invasions. The Bolshevik Revolution. At all those points, there were people who were convinced, sort of, this is it. Right. Clearly, the end of our civilization is the end of the world, and it hasn't been true yet. Eventually, someone will be right. And I think for a lot of people in the U.S., probably in other Anglophone countries, you can tell that there's a major shift happening now, and that there's the way things have been, at least, is in collapse, and so there's a tendency to go in the same direction. So I think, honestly, the best resource on this is St. Augustine's City of God, that he wrote while the empire was collapsing around him. Mm-hmm. Literally, I mean, barbarians invading and killing people, right? that was the news of the day, right?
Yeah, like,
every day. And
do you mind if I chime in on that? It was striking to me when I was reading City of God, because I was looking at it from more of like I thought it was interesting that he's almost like giving at one point like pastoral advice for people who had been ravaged in the while it was getting, like, it was being sacked, like Rome was being sacked, and talking about the I'm like man, they have a whole different category of issues that the priests were dealing with at that time than we do today. I couldn't imagine living in that time period. Just absolutely wild.
Yeah. And reading that and coming to understand that, coming to grips with that, I think helps a lot in terms of framing, right? Framing the things that we go through, framing, our own challenges, remembering that it could get that bad for us, right? It hasn't yet, but it certainly could.
Yeah.
No one in 1911 in Russia thought it was going to get as bad as it was about to.
That's true.
So it could, but the through line of it is that who Christ is unchanging through all of that, and who he calls us to be in following him is unchanging through all of that. And so it's possible to be in the world. I mean, hey, if you can get away from modern life and live near a monastery and grow your own food and stuff, do it, right? Cool. Not everyone could do that, obviously. Right. But even not being able to do that, you can be involved in all the day-to-day things that paying your bills and taking care of your family and working a job and paying your taxes and doing all that, and still be a follower of Christ. It's when your focus gets distracted from Christ to those day-to-day things of the world, that the anxiety, the fear, and all of those things ratchet up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's part of me that's like, oh man, it would be so nice to just leave the suburbs, leave the city, go live in, like, rural somewhere, and not have to worry about the society and everything like that. But then there's the other part of me that's like, well, this is kind of where the lost is. Like, you kind of want to be near the people that need to be saved. You know what I mean? So
well, yeah.
That's kind of I don't know what goes on in my mind. It's like one half of me. It's like that meme. There are two wolves inside of you.
Yeah. People sometimes think that if you don't have the calling to monasticism, that the other alternative is just sort of this neutral thing. Oh, okay, you're just going to be a regular person or something. But that being in a Christian living in the world is a calling.
Yeah.
Right. That is what Christ has called you to do is to live in the world and be a Christian. That's not sort of a neutral or a generic, right, over against the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Landon, huge super chat. Thank you so much. Father Bless, faithful consumer of the magisterial live stream for modernists here. I'm so thankful for you and just wanted you to know you're appreciated. Hope to visit your parish in the near future, hoping to become a catechumen very soon as well. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank God. Yeah. So the magisterial live stream for modernists is my Twitch stream. Because so the people who you guys keep calling Latinizers on social media, who are not Latinizers, I have too much respect for the Latins to slander them by calling these people Latinizers. These people are like crypto Protestants. They're arguing for like reformed, goofy stuff. Anyway, one of them, there's several of them who I live in their heads rent free. And this one in particular, someone mentioned me in front of him. And so he posted like a screenshot of my Twitch channel and said, "Is this live stream magisterial for modernists?" And so that became the title of the stream from
nice. That's awesome. So you do a lot of back and forths with the Latinizers on
No, I ignore them and
they just attack.
They go crazy. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I noticed like we're talking about them, or Father Deacon Ananias, when he was on the show, was bringing them up a little bit. It's like they're like 16-year-old with like a furry profile picture or something, or like all anime or something, you know.
Well, and people don't remember, but Shuping was doing all of this stuff before he apostatized. He had a blog. He was posting, no, Orthodoxy really teaches double imputation and penal substitutionary atonement and all this. And eventually he gave up because we kept telling him, no, it doesn't. And he just ended up leaving. And they're on that road. I mean, that's where they're headed. So, you know, don't let the door hit you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm actually going to I'll do a response video to a stream I did a while ago with Shuping. Luigi's going to come on the show and I'll be responding to myself. So that'll be interesting. Some of those arguments that he puts forth I don't think are the best. I'd asked him something about, because I don't know if you're familiar in like Lutheran soteriology, they have the crux theologium. So I was like, this seems like almost like they shot themselves in the foot. It's like you're predestined to heaven, but you're not predestined to hell. So it's like, you know, both like which way, you know, it seems like a contradiction. It's like, no, actually, it's just a mystery. You know, we can't explain why it's this way. And looking for an answer to that question, when he had been on the stream, I forget how long ago. The answers were just like kind of not really there, but I'll be doing a response video to some of my older stuff, so that'll be interesting. Kind of debunking evil Ben.
Arguing with your past self.
Yeah, that'll be fun. All right, so Beardy Jr. asks, I'm a catechumen in an Antiochian Western Rite parish, St. Tikhon. My priest is faithful to Orthodoxy, but I get anxious hearing attacks on the Western Rite. Are our sacraments truly grace-filled?
Yeah. So whenever anybody asks me my opinion on the Western Rite, I always qualify it by first saying, my opinion doesn't matter. Right. And this is something we all as Orthodox Christians need to understand. We need to understand the spheres in which our opinion matters. So like if you're a husband and father, your opinion matters on these things within your family. Right. But if you're a layperson, it doesn't really matter to the Orthodox Church. Right. I, as a priest, my opinion on these things matters in my parish, but it doesn't really matter to the broader Orthodox Church, right? And so the bishops have validated the liturgies being used at Western Rite parishes, right? They have blessed them for use. And as long as they are being used with the blessing of a bishop, right, they're being celebrated, the bishop's signature is on the antimons, right? Like, it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. It doesn't matter what criticisms people have. So everybody, you know, we're all quote unquote entitled to our opinion, and everyone's entitled to ignore it, you know, because it's not totally relevant. So that's what I would say to that. I mean, the importance is you are Orthodox if you are under the authority of an Orthodox bishop, a canonical Orthodox bishop. And that's it.
Yeah. There you go.
Right.
Simple as, very simple.
Yeah.
Thank you for the super chat. Question: is this the same Father Stephen DeYoung that wrote The Religion of the Apostles? If so, I enjoyed it. Also, I know Ben's answer, but what is the best fragrance for men?
So are you implying that if I'm not the same Father Stephen, you didn't enjoy the book? This is what I'm talking about with this bad logic, right?
Yeah, there you go. You need to send your questions in a syllogism. Okay.
But thank God. Yeah. And I don't know. I just use Old Spice stuff. I'm an old guy. Try to find some high karate. There we go. Go 1970s on the whole thing.
There you go. Yeah, I use Calvin Klein Shock. That's my go-to number one fragrance. Or guess. I don't even know what kind of guess it is, but it's blue. So I'm just guessing what it is. But it's the blue guess. I'll use that. Whatever my wife gets me typically. For Christmas, I say, I'm running out. Give me some more cologne. There you go.
Or you could just, try and develop a natural musk, right?
Yeah.
Just develop it.
That would not work out well for me.
Yeah. I'm not saying I recommend it. I'm just saying,
I could. That is one option indeed. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think that would work out too well. All right, let's see. Father Stephen DeYoung, have you read Dr. Jason Staples and or Dr. Barclay's work? I'm surprised nobody's talking about the Pauline works.
I have. There, with all the provisos I have to always give when I say a book is, there's always somebody, if you say, oh, this is a pretty good book, they're like, well, wait a second, on page 83 it says, this in the quarter, are you endorsing that? Right? Like, no. I'm not it. Right. So saying something's a good book. I've said a lot of times, people need to learn to read books for data, not for conclusions. So if you're reading a good book, especially like an academic book, but even a sort of high popular level book, like something Baker Eerdman's level, right? Like publication, they're going to lay out a bunch of information. They're going to lay out a bunch of arguments, and then they're going to come to conclusions. And you may think the conclusions they come to are stupid, right? You may think like that's the opposite of the truth. But there may be a lot of data and information and arguments there that are very helpful, right, to interact with. And I think a lot of times people like, is this book 100% Orthodox? Is this book like 100% on point? Is there anything in it that's wrong? And if it's not like infallible, then, oh, well, I'm not going to read it then. Or I heard this guy was a fill in the blank, so I'm not going to read it then, right? And you're not going to be a well-informed person who has the information and education to think well if you approach things that way.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I try to read books from people that I disagree with, understanding that I have a mission when I read a book. Typically, it's like, okay, well, I want to find information about this specific topic, and then I'll try to notate, or like, I'll put my little sticky notes in there. Or if I'm reading a digital version, I'll dump it into my Google Doc. It's like, okay, what this is, refutation of sola scriptura, or this is talking about the Montanists, or this is this person's view on the Montanists, and he disagrees with this other person.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's good advice. Approach the text, understanding that, even if you don't agree with the person 100%, you can still get some decent information out of it.
Yeah. It's not just pouring the text into your head. It's
right.
You're interacting with it when you're reading it.
Yeah. Well, I'm reading through the Pelican church history set right now, and I have a bunch of sticky notes like sticking out, making it look like a Subway sandwich. And I have this kitten that jumped up into my bookshelf and ate my sticky notes. So, all right, well, I guess I'll have to read it again. No, but I'm glad that like margin is like this big in that book. So I've like notated in the margin.
That's a good set. That's a good set for anybody. He was a Lutheran scholar who became Orthodox. But he's not writing like, here's my Orthodox presentation of all of church history, right? It helps a lot when he does the volume that's mainly dealing with the Orthodox Church, which you don't get in a lot of church histories, where Orthodoxy gets ignored. So obviously that adds a lot to that. But when he covers the Reformation, this is the guy who was the general editor on the complete works of Martin Luther before he converted. So when he talks about the Reformation, he knows what he's talking about there too. Right.
Yeah. That's in the last 3 books of the set, isn't it? Where he's going into. Yeah. I think the first 3 were pre-Reformation, the last 3 were post.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to get there. I read through the first one pretty quick, but then I just kind of got lazy. I didn't pick up. I got distracted. My priest gave me a book to read, so I read through that, and I just haven't picked up another one since.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting. That's a good set for sure. All right, Steady Dividends asks, could you discuss the Protestant presuppositions about the atonement which caused them to diverge from the Orthodox understanding? Do you have a sneak peek of your future atonement book? Ooh, exclusive.
Yeah, that's the book I'm writing now. So I did my PhD dissertation was on 1 John 2 verse 2d. So I wrote a couple of 100 words on 5 Greek words, 2 of which were and the.
Nice.
Nice. But so I did a lot with atonement in that, and so I'm doing that's the book I'm writing right now, and it's going to go through history and sort of show the development. And really, what happens in the West, it's not just Protestantism. Like when you get to PSA in the Reformed writers of the 17th century, right? The Protestant scholastics, that's sort of the full-blown thing, but there's a trail that leads there. And so major stepping stones on the way. The first really is in the West, them wrestling with universalism. Because they want to say, well, obviously Christ, his sacrifice is sufficient for every human being who has ever lived. But it only gets applied to a subset of human beings who have ever lived, if you're not a universalist. And so how does that work? And that last part I just said is what's important, because at every step along the way, how does that work is the problem. There's an assumption that there's a kind of mechanistic way that it works, right? Not just analogies or something that might shed light on some element of it, but an actual way it works that we can understand as humans. And so you get Peter Lombard. He makes the distinction between sufficiency and efficiency, right? So Christ's sacrifice is sufficient to save everyone. It is only efficient for those to whom it is applied. And then for him, it's applied primarily through the sacraments. You get into grace, you get into the early theology of merit that starts developing in the West. And then when you get to Anselm's Cur Deus Homo, that's where the idea of justice, sort of cosmic justice, enters the picture. But his conception and what becomes known as satisfaction theory is not really criminal justice the way we think about it. It's more like honor in an honor culture, right? Like honor in an honor culture, that our sin has dishonored the God who created us. And so something must be done to correct that dishonor, to restore God's honor and glory. That's where Anselm's satisfaction theory emerges. And then eventually, by the time you get to the Reformation, and this was going to entail things like double imputation and all these other sort of doctrines, Reformed doctrines, but that's where you get to the idea of penal substitution, that there is punishment for sin. It is an infinite punishment, right? And this idea of substitution that Christ takes it instead of us. right? Sort of absorbs that punishment, which has an endless array of, I mean, it destroys Trinitarian doctrine if you understand the Trinity. It wrecks Christology. It imposes necessity on God, because it says that essentially, when you're at the point of penal substitutionary atonement, you have a God who is not merciful because he can't be. He has to punish every sin to the fullest extent, right? He either has to punish Christ or punish you.
Right.
He can't forgive anything. He can't show mercy on any. The Greek word used for mercy in most of the New Testament literally means not punishing something to the full extent. And so that's why I say you end up with a God who's merciless, functionally. And justice then is this thing that's telling God what he has to do. And it's like, well, why aren't we worshiping that then? Because clearly that's above him or pre-exists him in some way or is prior to him. So yeah, there's no end of, I mean, penal substitutionary atonement just does not work with Christian theology at all.
Interesting. What do you think about I've heard this type of argument used, that if someone was going to articulate PSA as like the Father damned the Son, wouldn't that be kind of Nestorian? Do you think it's a valid?
Well, you're good at that. That's where Calvinism goes. You read like Peter Vermigli, right? He's just an historian, right? The wrath is poured out on Christ's human nature, on the human Christ and not his divine nature. Because if you don't do that, then you have the Trinitarian problem.
Right.
Of dividing the Trinity. So if you don't divide the Trinity, you're going to have to divide Christ and be an historian. Now, if you're William Lane Craig, who is a heretic on literally every point of doctrine and not a Christian, I've said this publicly before. He is not a Christian. He does not believe in the Trinity. He does not believe in the dual nature of Christ. He holds to heresies condemned by every ecumenical council. He rejects every single one of them, and he rejects the Nicene Creed.
Does he really reject the Nicene Creed?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay, so he's as Christian as a Mormon is. We'll put it that way. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if you know how far this goes. Recently, he laid out his old doctrine of the Trinity used to be comparing the Trinity to Cerberus, the three-headed dog.
Did he really? I saw he issued, like, he wrote a book and then had to issue a retraction on what he said because it was Christological heresy or something.
His new doctrine of the Trinity is he compared Christ to a cat skeleton, because a cat skeleton has the feline nature, but is not a cat all by itself.
That's tough.
Yes. So this is what I'm talking about. But anyway, so if you're William Lane Craig, he has what he calls a neo-Apollinarian. Apollinarianism being a condemned heresy, right, of the 4th century.
Right.
A neo-Apollinarian Christology, where he says that basically the divine logos is the soul in Christ. So it's a human body animated by the divine logos. That's his view of Christ. And so he literally, when I challenged him on this, said, well, his Christology lets him out of that problem with penal substitution. Because he says that on the cross, the second person of the Trinity, right, the divine logos, departed from Jesus, separated from, and then the human parts that were left received.
What a mess. You're turning my brain into a fried egg right now, just thinking about.
Sorry about that.
how much I didn't realize he was that rough. I saw him on Gavin's show a little while ago talking about real presence and how he disagrees with that particular doctrine. But so I started to dig into it, what he actually believed, and I saw a couple of things about a book he had wrote, and he had gotten some things about Christology wrong, but I didn't know he was that rough. That's wild to me.
Yeah, so part of the way he covers it up is he won't debate other Christians.
Oh,
he'll only debate atheists.
Nice.
Okay. So he'll go and have a debate with an atheist about the existence of God. Well, he believes in the existence of a God, right? So he can
a cat skeleton.
But my response to him has always been, I don't consider you a fellow Christian, so debate me, right? Like,
There you go. The gauntlet has been slapped down. I think
Get around
we
that.
did get an Inquirer question here. So let me.
Yes, absolutely.
All right,
Enough picking on William Lane Craig.
Kirkpatrick. William Lang Craig asks. No, I'm just kidding. Kirkpatrick, Inquirer here. Am I understanding your writings correctly when I say the ancient pagan gods Zeus, Mars, Baal, etc., exist and have influenced culture, but they're actually demons?
Yes.
There you go. Easy
That's a
answer
quick
right
one.
there. There you go. Thank you for asking your question.
And that's what the fathers say. I mean, that's
Right.
not something I came up with. That's,
Right. Yeah, I agree. Reminder for y'all, if you're just tuning in, if you are an inquirer, put it in your question there. So that way I know to pull up your questions first, because I want to make sure the inquirers get answered. But I'm also going to answer the super chats when they're sent in, just to say thank you. But inquirers, you guys come first. So let me know where you're at. John asks, or he says, what is the Orthodox view on sacraments outside of the church? What does that mean for how converts are received? Interested in your opinion.
Yeah. There's another place where my opinion doesn't matter that much. Because I'm not a bishop. So the Orthodox approach to this is that, frankly, we don't say anything about sacraments outside the Orthodox Church. It's that bishops set the way in which they are going to receive converts who they receive in particular times, in particular places, in particular situations. And a bishop has the authority to do that. And they have the authority to change that, right? They have the authority to look at a situation and say, well, you know what? We've got this particular group that believed and practiced this. They're coming in maybe en masse. So we're going to receive them this way. And then a month later, they get one person from a similar group and they say, you know what? We're going to baptize this person. Right. That's the bishop's authority, right? He has that authority to do that. And because this could be hard for people, the structures of authority and obedience in the Orthodox Church, I know, are really hard for people coming from American culture in general, because obedience is like this dirty word in American culture, right? Like, we're all rebels. I will not obey. I question authority. But when a bishop makes a ruling that is within his scope of authority, right? And that's important when we're talking about the papacy, for example, because the papacy would make rulings that were outside of its scope of authority, and that was the problem. But when a bishop makes rulings that are within his scope of authority for his own churches, right, he can't be wrong, because he has the authority to make a ruling, and he made the ruling. Right? And so that ruling is the correct ruling. So if your bishop tells you, I'm going to receive you this way, that is the correct way for you to be received.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I've heard it articulated maybe this way, that the sacraments are only valid within the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church has the sacraments, but the bishops choose whether or not they want to receive somebody by chrismation, or if they need baptism.
Right.
They're not saying if they receive you by chrismation, therefore your baptism outside was valid. It's just, this is how they're choosing to receive you.
That's how they're choosing to receive you.
Right. But about the Eucharist,
now, in your case, and it's a case by case. Yeah, it's a case by case. And this is a broad concept in Orthodoxy. It's important to understand, because people get a hold of the canons when they're first interested in the church, and it's like they've just discovered there's a hospital, but instead of going to the hospital and putting themselves under the care of a physician, they just go on WebMD, right, and try to diagnose themselves and everyone they know and all the doctors at the hospital, and with all these different things. So the canons are a tool. That's why the collection's called the rudder that the bishops use to steer the ship. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what they're for. And so the canons always represent the normal procedure. Okay? But bishops rule on individual cases all the time and say, well, in this case, normally this is the best way to go, but in this particular case, why is this a better place to go? Because the bishop's concern is the salvation of the people involved. Right. not enforcing a list of rules. Okay. So if he looks at the people involved, and like St. Paul says, this is a different but related topic. Like St. Paul says, this person's divorced, but it's better to be married than burn with lust.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And maybe there's small children involved or something. So I'm going to give this person permission to remarry. Right? That is not a failure to enforce some kind of rule. That is the bishop making a ruling that's within his purview because he's looking out for the salvation of the individual people involved in their particular situation.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's how we need to receive these things when we get a ruling, whether it's the one we want or not. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, the Eucharist is not, there's no valid Eucharist outside of the Orthodox Church, though, correct?
Well, I mean, what would that mean? Right? I mean, what do you mean by valid?
Right. Well, he says there's no Eucharist. I guess he didn't use the word valid.
Well, yeah, I mean, right. Are you saying that God has never worked in someone's life through something that kind of resembles the Eucharist in some other church body? I can't say that for certain, right? But it's not on par with they're not doing what we're doing, the Orthodox Church. So yeah, it's not the Eucharist in the sense that the Orthodox Church's Eucharist is the Eucharist.
Right. All right, so let's see. Any other Inquirer ones first before I dive back into these? I have an Inquirer super chat that was sent in. Let's get to this one. Inquirer question. Father, in your view, what is the most important thing for the unbaptized to focus on if they're convinced of Orthodoxy but have to wait for baptism?
So I think the most important thing is that you don't look at it as waiting for baptism. So the year, or however long it ends up being for you, generally it's at least a year, is not a hoop for you to jump through or a cooling off period. Now, it may have those functions, especially the cooling off period. But the purpose of it is that this is to be a period of repentance and a period of transformation, right? Where you look back on the life you've lived so far and you find both the things that God has been doing in your life that have led you to this point, because you wouldn't be about to enter the Orthodox Church if the Holy Spirit wasn't leading you there. So God has been working in your life to bring you to this point. But there's also a lot of other stuff, including a lot of sin, right, for all of us along the way. Mm-hmm. And to be thinking about that transformation, because when that baptism comes around and you receive the forgiveness of sins in baptism, you're being given a whole new start. New life, new you, maybe a new name in the church, right? Where you get to start over. And you're not going to get another one of those in the same way. So you need to be thinking about, what are the things of the person I've been so far that I want to not be true about me anymore? You get this powerful moment where you get to break character. Right? You get to, whatever was true about you the day before you're baptized doesn't have to be true the day after. You can leave it behind. Right? And for me, when I got to the point of being received in the church, I had a lot I wanted to leave behind. But also a lot of things God had been doing in my life that I wanted to bring out and I wanted to further and I wanted to grow in. And so use this time for that. Use this time for that, to make a good first confession, because that's what you're going to need to talk about in your first confession. And then to prepare to live the new life you're going to be living in the church.
There you go. There's your hope pill right there. That was very inspiring. Yeah, I love that. That's good. Yeah, because I've been thinking about the same thing myself. It's kind of like, I'm waiting to participate fully in the sacramental life of the church. So it's like, I know God's working and is pouring out grace even now, as as I attend the Divine Liturgy and Vesper services and the catechism classes and so on and so forth. But I'm like, man, I need the Eucharist Please, yeah.
But that hunger for it is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is kind of like you grow, at least for me, I feel like I'm being stretched. You know what I mean? Waiting for that. I'm being stretched. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
now be patient. Now sit in the valley for a bit. Just go. Just keep
Yeah.
going. Sit in the valley. See,
Yeah.
you know, lean on me. Let's see if you can lean on me, kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And developing patience and self-control. If you develop self-control to the point of self-mastery, you've got the whole thing. Right? You have all the virtues if you could truly control yourself at all
I was
times.
just saying, I got some work to do.
Yeah, we all do. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely got some work to do for sure. All right, let's see. For Gilman, do Orthodox use the term spiration for the Holy Spirit? How, if so, how is it distinct from procession?
Not very commonly. That's more of a Western term. So you'll see there's a whole epoch of Orthodox literature from Russia and Europe where they're using, and this gets mischaracterized sometimes, they're using Latin terms because that's what was being used in the seminaries in Eastern Europe and Russia to express the Orthodox faith. They are not sort of crypto Roman Catholics or something just because they're using that terminology, right? But some of the writings that come out of that can, especially if like inquirers, right, in the West, read them because they see those words and you think you know what it means, right? You say, oh, I know what that, right? And it's not necessarily being used the same way when it's being used by an Orthodox writer. They're using it usually to cover over a Greek term, right? And the meaning is actually more contained in the Greek term. So when you see spiration in Orthodox authors, they're usually using it as the Western term, and proceeding is what they're really getting at. And if you ask me what proceeding means, I'll quote St. Gregory the theologian, who said, if you ask me what proceeding means, I will tell you I do not know.
There you go. Yeah, I know there's a lot of talk about that after the Tim Gordon, Jay Dyer debate. It was like, Spirit spirates himself. Spirates himself. What is he spirating himself? So that was an interesting debate. Did you catch that?
I saw parts of it. So part of the, here's why I don't watch a lot of Jay Dyer debates, right? If you have two debaters who are not equal in debating skill, the debate tends to just prove who's a better debater, right? It's like if Brock Lesnar was fighting randos off the street in the octagon, right? Like it'd be funny for a couple of fights, but then you're like, I kind of want to see him fight somebody of equivalent skill.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of guys who have the equivalent skill out there who are willing to debate Jay Dyer. So,
you know who I'd like to see? I'd
he's
like
sort
to
of
see
beating people up, is what I'm saying. And so,
right, yeah,
they're less interesting to me.
I agree. I feel like the guys that would be any good at it just don't do it. They know Jay's a threat, so they don't want to debate him. I'd like to see Joe Heschmeyer, though. That would be an interesting one because he's a lawyer.
Yeah,
so,
there are a few people out there, but they aren't the ones stepping up to debate him. I'll debate him about Twin Peaks. I think that's about the only thing we disagree on. I don't think we disagree theologically very much.
There you go. Twin Peaks debate. I'll host. All right, let's see. Father Stephen, going through your archived Bible study uploads on your channel, I noticed you reading from the NIV. Is that your preferred translation?
No. And that's why those are being replaced. But no. So here was the deal. When I was going through the Old Testament the first time, so I went through the whole Bible. I go verse by verse. It took 12 and a half years and went through the whole Orthodox Bible. I went through the whole Orthodox Old Testament. And then looped around. Right. And so now I'm on the second loop. I'm going back through the Old Testament. And so I don't think it's in reach. No, it's all the way across the room. I have this very rare book. There were only 500 of them printed. That is a triglot Old Testament. It has English, Hebrew, and Greek in parallel columns for the whole Old Testament. And unfortunately, it was published by Zondervan, meaning the English is the NIV because that's the translation they own. That's the dirty secret of Bible translations. The reason there are so many is that every Protestant publishing house wants to own one, so they don't have to pay royalties to use somebody else's. Yeah. so I wanted to have the Greek and the Hebrew in front of me. Right. And so I was doing it that way and reading from the English there and then correcting it all the time from the Hebrew and the Greek. And so now on my second time through, if you've been listening as they've been released, I think they're now into Leviticus, what they've released. We started Deuteronomy in real time, the Parish Bible Study. But I'm going through and reading the Orthodox Study Bible and then correcting that translation. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be neat. When I was a Protestant pastor, we preached from the NIV, but I kind of I don't know, I noticed compared to some of the other manuscript traditions, some of the way that things are articulated or worded are, I don't know if it's intentional, but they're a little wonky. You know what I mean? In the NIV?
Yeah. Anything you get to that's theological. Now, a lot of the time when I was using that, you're going through the story of David on the run from Saul, right? You're not,
right.
Translation doesn't make a huge difference, but you get into anything, even like Deuteronomy or Ecclesiastes, anything with any theological bent in the Old Testament and NIV.
Yeah, it's like just slightly skewed. Yeah. That's why when I would use it, I would often use Bible Hub and go through Strong's Concordance.
Yeah.
And look at and compare and contrast through all the other translations and see. But I got to go through again because I've read the 73 book canon. I got to go through and read the other 3 books in the Orthodox Study Bible, so that'll be interesting. But I know they don't have
some critiques of it, but
an online application that has the full thing. I don't think, do they?
Yeah, they're putting out. They're doing a Bible. It's gonna have the Lexham English Septuagint, which is something of a misnomer, but anyway, it's gonna have that, and then the Eastern Orthodox Bible, New Testament.
Yeah, I want to do another read through and another translation because I used to do this program where we would go through and read one chapter a day, Monday through Friday. And I would do this with like a group of young men, and we would go through and kind of, they'd ask their questions or whatever, and we would dive through and look at patristics, look at what they said, so on and so forth, and kind of chat about it. So I kind of want to go through it again, but maybe use like the Orthodox Study Bible. That might be interesting. But I'd be doing that by myself since I don't run a mentorship program anymore. But that would be kind of cool just for my own growth. But anyway. All right, let's see. I've been attending liturgy and vespers for 3 months, but I've mostly kept to myself. Should I try to get more involved before requesting to be catechized?
Yes.
There you go.
No, so let me expand on that. So the Orthodox Church especially understands that the church and salvation and God's grace come to us communally. They come to us within the community. And we honestly have a different view of the church than like Roman Catholicism. Like Roman Catholicism, you just go to the nearest Roman Catholic church, pick the mass that fits your schedule out of the 12 that day, right? And receive the Eucharist and you're on your way, right? But in the Orthodox Church, I tell people you don't join the Orthodox Church. You join an Orthodox Church. And by virtue of being part of that community, that is a community under the authority of a canonical Orthodox bishop, you are part of the Orthodox Church. So you're not just joining some kind of invisible conceptual reality of the Orthodox Church. That's not what you're doing when you become a catechumen. You're joining that particular community that you're attending. Right? You're joining that group of people, and you're going to be working out your salvation with those people, and they're going to be working out their salvation with you.
Mhm.
right? And you're all going to be helping and aiding and coming alongside each other. And so, since what you're doing when you become a catechumen is starting the process of joining that community, you got to get to know that community. You got to get to know those people, and you've got to let them get to know you.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. That's why I took my time finding a good church. And I spoke to the priests and stuff, and the church I ended up finding had a really good community. And I'm a very social person. I would make a very poor monk, I think. 'Cause I need to talk. I'm a yapper, so I made sure one of the things I was wanting to find was local church with a good like fellowship program, or like with like you can go and make friends and stuff. Because
Yeah,
I mean, I was an associate pastor, so I'm used to being busy. I can't be
yeah,
not busy. So I'm like, oh, I got all this time. I got all this time on my hands. I got to be talking to people about God. So that's
yeah,
why I like doing these streams. It just allows me a chance to kind of yap and socialize a bit. But then also the church that I've been attending, excellent men's fellowship. They do coffee hour. They just had like a whole hog cookout after the service on the this last Sunday for their coffee hour there. So it's been cool. And I'm like, when I go into coffee hour, I'm like, I've got a mission. I got to meet somebody new, and I got to get some phone numbers so I can like,
yeah,
start
yeah.
chatting with people.
No, and that's powerful. And we're on the internet, so I know some of the people who are watching this now or who will watch it, that may be very hard for you.
Mhm.
Like walking into a big group of people who all know each other and trying to get into that socially, it may not come as easy to you as it does to Ben, right? Like, that's right. You may be the opposite in your bent, right? That may be very hard for you. But the fact that it's very hard for you is a sign of how much you need that, how
Yeah,
much your soul needs that.
that's
And so
true.
make the effort to crack through that.
I've
And,
got
and
I've got some advice for you guys. You use my tactic, okay? You sit down in the room, you wait for somebody to go up by themselves to get coffee, then you go to get coffee. Hey, how's it going? I'm new here. Or hey, how's
yeah,
it going? My name is, what's your name? There you go. That's the tactic. You got to wait until they walk away from their group. So it's like you're hunting.
yeah. Strategery. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You have to walk up crouched, very creepy like. Be funny. All right, Father, what is your opinion on G.K. Chesterton?
So my opinion of GK Chester, he seems like the kind of guy who I'd like to drink with. But like I have very little to no Anglophile in me.
Hmm.
This is one of my dirty, like C.S. Lewis does nothing for me. I know that makes me a weirdo to some people. Tolkien, I'm not even that into.
That's it.
It just I
Stream's
don't.
over.
I'm like I'm a continental philosophy guy. I'm reading German stuff. You know, that's more musically, right? Everything like I'm more a continental Europe guy. So that's just my bent. So I'm kind of familiar with Chesterton, but he doesn't vibe with my Volk soul or whatever is going on.
Not a fan. Not a G.K. Chesterton vibes fan. Templar, cheers. Good to
Yeah.
see you. Yeah, I like C.S. Lewis. I think Screwtape Letters is helpful for
Yeah.
understanding spiritual warfare and things like that.
My dad was
Um,
huge into my dad was a huge C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, George MacDonald, all that stuff. It just I don't know, just doesn't do a thing for me.
how dare you? I draw the line at Tolkien. I agree. Lord of the Ring, let's go.
Well, I'm also 0% weeb, so I'm more
Oh,
proud of that one. That's
nice. All right, we have a couple of Inquirer questions I'm going to get to before I go back into Super Chat. So let's look here. Inquirer, interesting question. How does Orthodox theology work out unclean foods now being clean, especially since Acts 10 seems to be about Jews being able to eat with Gentiles? Thanks.
yeah. So the crisis in Acts about Jews and Gentiles coming to the table together is about the Eucharist. Okay. So the central issue is, when you read the Torah, in order to be able to eat the Passover, you had to keep Torah, right? You had to be clean, right? You had to follow all of these things. Now, the Torah also says that those commandments regarding clean and unclean foods and all of that was only for Israel, not for the Gentiles. Right? That's in the Torah. That's not something that changes in the New Testament. That's in the Torah. That's why you never saw the Jews trying to go and like force the Philistines to keep kosher, or right. It's not like Muslim law where you go and impose it on the world. Right. It's that those were special rules for them because they were the ones who had the sanctuary of God in their midst. Right. And so to be able to approach God, they were approaching God in a way that the Gentiles weren't. And so they had to be at a higher level of holiness and purity than the Gentiles were. And the priests had to be at a higher level than the Jewish laity. The high priest had to be at an even higher level, especially on the Day of Atonement. Right. So there were sort of these concentric circles based on how people were drawing close to God. Okay. So in Acts, the reason there's a persistent issue is that you have people who become Christians, and the early Christians are gathering. They're still going to the synagogues on the Sabbath, but then they're gathering on the Lord's Day to celebrate the Eucharist at this point. And so the Christians showing up to celebrate the Eucharist, some of them are Jewish, and so are keeping this higher level of purity. And some of them are converts from paganism who didn't become Jewish, who are not. And so there were, as Acts says, particularly from the party of the Pharisees, right? But these are Christians from the party of the Pharisees. These are Christian Pharisees who have become Christian, accepted Jesus as the Messiah, say, hey, we can't allow these people to approach the Eucharist with us because, frankly, it could kill them. Ask if you know an Orthodox Jew or can find one who will talk to you. Ask him what would happen if you, as a Gentile, ate the Passover with him. They'll tell you you might die, and they wouldn't let you. St. Paul isn't coming up with that about the Eucharist out of nowhere, right? So this becomes the crisis. So do they need to go and be circumcised, keep kosher, do all of these things that Jewish people do in order to receive the Eucharist, or no? In Acts 15, right, Council of Jerusalem happens. They take a very literal reading of what's called the Holiness Code in Leviticus, which is Leviticus starts in chapter 17. Scholars argue about where it ends. Some say chapter 23, some say chapter 24. That section of Leviticus is called the Holiness Code. That's where the kosher food laws are. That's where the sexual immorality laws are in Leviticus 18. Lots of stuff in there. If you go through that, you could take out any translation, any English translation of the Bible. You can do this yourself. Start in Leviticus 17. Start reading it. Read it through the end of the book, right? You will find that over and over again, the Lord says to Moses, say to the children of Israel, right? And then it'll lay out the food laws, right? There are 4 times in the Holiness Code where God says to Moses, say to the children of Israel and all the foreigners living among you, And those 4 times are sexual immorality, idolatry, and 2 times about eating blood. And when you go to Acts 15 in the Council of Jerusalem, you'll notice there's 4 things they say: sexual immorality, idolatry, and 2 things about eating blood. And it's the 2 things about eating blood that really cinches it, right? that this is not a coincidence. So they're not changing the Torah. They're taking a very literal reading of the Torah, the apostles, and saying, no, those commandments were never given to Gentiles. Gentiles can come to the table, right? Provided those 4 things, right? If they've been participating in sexual immorality, then no, they can't come to the table. If they've been, right, the other things. But if they've refrained from those things, they can come to the table. They don't have to become Jewish and keep all of those other things to be worthy of receiving the Eucharist.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of people in the comments. Great insight, hot takes. Yeah, that was good. That'll be something good to dive back into later. That's a interesting insight into that passage there. That it's about the Eucharist and kind of what they determined they needed to do to be able to partake in it.
Yeah.
Let me see, because there was an.
I go into that some more in my book St. Paul the Pharisee. I go into that in some detail if you want more of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There was an inquirer question I lost. Hold on, let me see. Because I want to make sure, because it was good. Okay, there you go. Perfect. Question inquirer longing to join. Is there any benefit to me becoming a catechumen while my wife is still reluctant to join, mainly because she's afraid of losing her social circle?
I think there is. Because I don't think you're going to win her over to sacrifice her social circle based on arguments you make or not being around the church. I think if you enter into the process and you take it seriously, right? So, I mean, you've got a mission here. You're not only working to save your own soul, but you also working toward your wife's salvation. And she starts to see the difference in you. She starts to see God working in you. She starts to see a transformation in you. That reality of God's grace is the thing that will draw her, and that she will think is more important than the social circle and other related issues.
Yeah. You know what helped with me? I was lucky. I was blessed to have a buddy that was going to one of the churches I was visiting. So I went with my wife one time there, and I planned specifically to go to lunch right after, and hang out with my buddy and his girlfriend, so that way she could meet some people. Because I think it's very difficult to go into a situation where you legitimately don't know anybody, especially for a woman. It's hard. They're very social creatures, even more than me, and I'm a yapper, but very social. So you got to make sure it's like, okay, well, first off, she has to know these are human beings, right? And these are people that can be my friends. How is she going to be able to like picture herself in that community if she doesn't know anybody there? It's just like, okay, well, you're ripping me away from all my friends, and now I'm not going to have any. Or, oh, well, maybe I can go hang with Stephanie or Susie or whoever. And I know Susie. I want to go hang out with her, and we can chat about stuff at coffee hour or something. So I think that's it helped in my situation. Maybe it would help in yours. I don't know. Also, some advice that I was given was to pitch at least, hey, maybe go with me like once a month or something and meet some people or something. That might be comparable or a decent compromise there. Question from Rebecca. I've heard the argument, I can't pronounce that, is translated as aeon or age
Aeonios,
instead of eternal to justify universal salvation. Is there a good counter to this?
Oh, yeah. Well, so this is one of the goofier things that like David Bentley Hart does to try to argue for universalism. So, I mean, yes, technically speaking, right? In Greek, when it says eternal life, say in St. John's Gospel, you could woodenly literally translate it as the life of the age, which is referring to the life of the age or the world to come, right? Meaning the resurrected life at the end of the age. But so because of that, what some universalists will try to do is they'll ignore that part that I just said, right? And they'll go and say, well, see, when it talks about eternal condemnation, that just means condemnation of the age, like for an age, for some period of time, right? So they'll try to argue that then, So yeah, there's some kind of purgatorial kind of hell, but everybody ends up going to heaven. Right? So the problem is they'll try to do this in verses where, like, the verse immediately before that was talking about eternal life in the same terms. Meaning, if you're going to say that's what the word means, you have to translate it the same way in both verses. So that would mean if condemnation has an end, then that would mean eternal life has an end too.
Mm.
So I don't know, and they don't want to say that eternal life has an end. Obviously, right? They're just trying to say that hell is temporary, but they'll try and do that. Like David Bentley Hart literally tries to do that in his New Testament translation with 2 verses in a row, translate the same word differently when it's talking about eternal life than when it's talking about eternal condemnation. And so that to me is self-refuting, right? That's contradictory. You're showing you're playing fast and loose when you can't even translate a whole sentence consistently. Have it work for your argument.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of times with the guys that want to try to lessen eternal condemnation or something along those lines, it is very one directional. I've seen that. It definitely seems emotionally driven. I was talking to somebody who told me, I was asking, why are you Anglican? Like, it's just genuine question. Like, why are you Anglican? And he's like, well, I'm free to believe, what was it, in annihilationism. So that was the only reason he's Anglican and not something else. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem like a very good reason. Like,
that man was John Stott. Yeah, no. And no, it usually is. It usually comes down to there's someone they loved, someone they care about, a family member or someone else who died in a way, away from the church or away from Christ or away from, and they think that if they believe in what the scriptures and the church has always taught about eternal condemnation, well, certainly that person would have to be suffering that. And I point out, well, why? Right? Like, how do you know that? Right? You're literally not the judge of that, right? And like, that's Christ's judgment. And number 2, there's something you could do about it. You can pray for that person.
Yeah.
Right?
Rebecca says, thank you, Father. I have a Protestant family who use that exact argument.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a question from Gerald. This is a Lutheran buddy that always has something funny to say in every stream. It says, Father, are we finally at the moment when you and your vested powers can declare Cleve bald, or is he still considered balding?
Well, this is a whole thing in Aristotle, right? This is one of the examples Aristotle uses, because this is a logical problem in philosophy, is how many hairs do you have to have on your head to not be bald?
There you go.
Right? Because if someone just has 1 hair, you would say they're bald, and 2, okay, probably still bald. So there is some point, but we can't define that point. Right? Precisely.
According to my daughter, I'm already there. So
okay.
We'll go out to dinner. She'll be like, Daddy, why are you bald?
Yeah. But that comes up in Aristotle's logic, because he's making an important point with it, that just because you can't strictly define the limit of something, right, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Right. So the distinction between bald and having hair exists, even though we can't precisely define where that line is crossed. So see, I made that question worthwhile.
There you go. Perfect. Well, that'd be kind of subjective, right? Up to the person who's viewing the balding. Is a person actually balding if there's no one there to witness it? If a balding man is in the woods and there's no one to witness, like the tree. All right, let's see. Been Orthodox 10 years at a Greek Orthodox parish with problems with the EP and OCU, Rome, and Elpidophoros. Should I leave my jurisdiction?
No.
There you go.
None of the people you just named are your bishop, unless you happen to be have the misfortune of being in Elpidophoros'. Did I say misfortune? I'm sorry. Unless you happen to be in Archbishop Elpidophoros' diocese, which is very small. You have a bishop. You have a metropolitan, actually, in the Greek Archdiocese of the U.S. You have a metropolitan who is your bishop. Okay. And so this isn't Roman Catholicism. We don't have popes, right? Even internal popes. My bishop is part of the Holy Synod of Antioch. Okay, but the Patriarch of Alexandria is not my bishop. He is not the one who has authority in my parish, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the policy. And even if your metropolitan in the Greek Archdiocese co-signed all the worst stuff, right, that Patriarch Bartholomew and Archbishop Epidephoros have ever said, right, he is still a canonical Orthodox bishop, which means you're receiving the sacraments, you're receiving the, your salvation is not dependent on his, right? His is between him and God, and how he uses his authority is between him and God.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Father. Catechumen here. Is it bad to step out of church during epiclesis till after the Eucharist? I really can't look at the chalice without feeling envious.
So I don't know if your priest does the dismissal of the catechumens and, tells you to go away. I do it, but I don't actually want them to go away. I would talk to your priest about it, honestly. And you may talk to him about how you feel about it, and he may say, you know what, for now, why don't you do that? It was traditional for catechumens to leave during that part of the liturgy. So why don't you go ahead and do that and just wait in the narthex or wherever. He'll probably want you to start coming in as the time of your reception comes closer, because he'll want you to know how the liturgy works right? A little better. Or he may tell you, no, he wants you to be there, in which case you should do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I heard on Athos, the narthex is huge, like almost the same size as a sanctuary, because they still have people go wait out in the narthex when they say the doors.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting piece there. It's like the priest was walking in as he was visiting Athos, and he was like, "What is this room? It's massive." It's the narthex. So that's where all the catechumens are, I guess, are whoever, standing up there. Yeah. Interesting. All right. How many selfies does Father Damick have to post before you would chastise him?
I chastise him continuously. Do you not listen to any time I talk? All I do is abuse him verbally.
Nice. Tongues of Angels. Loved your take on the devil and Satan being two different beings. Could the fall of Satan have been at the incarnation? Heiser's view of Revelation 12 tying the two events together came to mind.
Yeah, so I would not tie those two events together. I don't know if that's my take. I talk about in Religion of the Apostles the fact that there are traditions, both in Second Temple Judaism and in the early church, where Satan and the devil are two different figures. There are also traditions where they're one figure. When you read St. Andrew of Caesarea, his commentary on the book of Revelation, which is the magisterial commentary on Revelation for the Orthodox Church, St. Andrew of Caesarea's work literally is why the book of Revelation is canonical in the East, because of his commentary, presenting a way of reading it, right? The way of reading it he presents there. And so when he gets to Revelation 12, and he talks about what's depicted there with St. Michael throwing the dragon out of heaven, he points out there's two different ways the Greek can be read, because you have to remember that originally the Greek had no punctuation, no breaks between words, right? No sentence breaks. And so you can read it as the dragon, who is the devil and Satan, or you can read it, the dragon who is the devil and Satan. Right. he points out that even that can be read those two different ways, right? And there's no way from the text to tell which is the right one. Now, St. Andrew believes it's the first option, that they're one being. Those are all names for the same being. But St. Andrew also says that the event being talked about there, he reads Revelation 12 as talking about the birth of Christ. And so this fall of Satan happens after the birth of Christ. And so he ties it to the point at which Christ said, after he sends out the disciples to go and cast out demons and work healings, and they come back and say, even the demons, right, answered to our authority. And Christ says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. So St. Andrew reads that as Christ having seen that through the apostolic ministry. And so there is this fall of Satan out of heaven that happens during the ministry of Christ that Revelation 12 is referring to. And that the fall of the devil proper happened, as St. Andrew says, we have to believe what all the fathers taught. That's what St. Andrew says, that after the creation of the world, the devil fell through envy. So he places the fall of the devil there. And then the casting out during Christ's lifetime would be referring to the role that Satan has, like in the book of Job, as the accuser of the brethren, right? Where he sort of comes into God's presence and makes accusations. Now through the ministry of Christ, right, he is no longer able to go and accuse the brethren. St. Michael has sort of thrown him out, right? And that's very much in keeping with Second Temple Jewish traditions, like the one referred to in St. Jude's epistle, when he talks about St. Michael and the devil contesting over the body of Moses. There was this imagery in Second Temple Judaism of St. Michael, who was the patron saint of Judea, right, of Israel, sort of defending Moses at his death, and the devil and Satan accusing him, right? That kind of dynamic. And so now through the ministry of Christ, right, St. Michael just hauls off and chucks him out of the room, right? Just shows him the door. Now he's no longer even able to make accusation. And that's reflected in some of St. Paul's language later too, right? Now there is no one who can make an accusation against the Lord's elect.
An inquirer here, or said, I guess he's seeking. I'm looking into EO. I have a similar story as Cleve. What advice would you have? Become Orthodox.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got to attend liturgy, right? You've got to attend liturgy. And I tell people, the people who show up at my parish, I tell them there's lots of reasons why people show up, right? There's lots of reasons why people think they want to join the Orthodox Church. There's only one reason to join the Orthodox Church, and that's because you find Christ there. Right? And so you need to go, you need to participate as you can as an inquirer in the worship. You need to get to know the community. And if you find the pearl of great price, right, buried in a field, you sell everything you own.
Yeah.
To go and buy the field, right? That's
absolutely. I resonate with that a lot. I feel like I certainly sold quite a bit, I think, but it was all worth it. And I feel that same way today. He was saying he is looking for, or he still attends his church on Sunday, but he wants to go to a Vesper. Do it. Go to a Vesper service. That's what I did originally.
There's going to be some liturgies during the week coming up. There's some feast days coming up when they'll probably have liturgies during the week, maybe in the evening that you can go to. If not, they'll have Vespers for the feast in the evening that you can go to.
Yeah. I remember the first Vesper service I was going to visit. Well, I had visited a Divine Liturgy with a buddy of mine a while before this, though. This was maybe half a year before I had seriously started considering it. And but the first Vespers I attended, when I actually was legitimately considering it, I walked in through the wrong door and the entire place looked at me, and I was like, okay. And I closed the door, and I waited, I waited for the priest to come out, and I was like, hello, I'm an inquirer. Can I ask you some questions? So I was like, I felt too awkward to go in at first.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I walked in through the wrong door, and there's like not that. I mean, it was a smaller parish, but like everyone's like, oh.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm not going to waste my trip here at least. So
Yeah.
I waited and I spoke to the priest, and he was like, he was a visiting priest. So I asked him some of my questions, and it was nice. It was interesting. And then after that, I went to a church with one of my buddies and visited a couple of different parishes and so on and so forth. But yeah, for that same person who was asking AJ to barber, just go to the Vespers. Make sure you talk to the priest though. Like if you want to allow yourself to like psych yourself out, they want to talk to you. So go and talk.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Where was I at here? A lot of questions. Here you go. Okay, perfect. Father Stephen, can you talk about Daniel 14, Habakkuk bringing Daniel his stew allegory, or an example of God transcending time and space?
The latter.
I like the short answers.
Yeah, no. So, well, this is a running, Lord of Spirits. We do call-ins, and I'm famous for just giving yes and no answers to like complicated questions. Yeah, what's going on with Daniel, especially in the latter chapters, is this is what we call apocalyptic literature. And apocalyptic doesn't mean there's a zombie outbreak or Mad Max or something. Apocalyptic doesn't even mean the end of the world. Apocalyptic just comes from apocalypsis, which means something is being revealed. And in apocalyptic literature of the Second Temple Jewish period, which is what Daniel is, you have a figure, in this case Daniel, who goes on sort of a heavenly journey. He's essentially taken into heaven, and from that vantage point, they see the past, the present, the future, and they see spiritual reality, the spiritual reality that underlies the events that are happening on earth in the past, in the present, and the future. Okay. And so all through those chapters of Daniel is like dipping in and out of time. There's the heavenly man he encounters, who is Christ, and there's a reason he's referred to as a man there, right? So, and the Son of Man, who he sees, the person who looks human. This is one of the most brain breaking ideas that you get in the Fathers, when you start to understand that hymns like the Cassiani that we sing in Holy Week, which is a hymn that's written from the perspective of the repentant woman who washed Christ's feet with her hair and with her tears. And she says that those are the same feet that Adam and Eve heard walking in the garden. So like level 1 is like, oh, that's beautiful poetry. And then like level 2 is like, oh no, wait, the church is serious. Those are the exact same feet, right, that Adam and Eve heard in the garden. So yeah, it's kind of head exploding, but yes, Daniel is seeing things all through history in those chapters. And so that is a wibbly wobbly, timey wimey part of the book of Daniel.
Yeah, we love our theophanies, folks. All right. Here's one I missed. I probably should have got to this one earlier. I hope you're still in the chat here. Question. I'm a Protestant pastor. I love much about Orthodoxy. So it seems like he's kind of on the fence about maybe inquiring about Orthodoxy or so on and so forth. But I also believe that many have been and are truly saved in Protestantism. I've seen too much to believe otherwise. What do you say?
Yeah. So I think that way of looking at it is actually good and healthy. there's a tendency sometimes for people, and this is something like as a priest receiving people, I have to be very careful about, where people go through this phase where part of their love of Orthodoxy is tainted a little by an animus they have toward where they came from. Right, and how they were brought up, and whatever previous religious tradition they were a part of, and those are not the same thing, and they're not related, and it is a tainting of your love for Orthodoxy. It would be like if every time you thought about how much you love your wife, you also had thoughts about how much you hated your ex-girlfriend. Right, that would not be healthy. that would not be productive and helpful in your marriage relationship with your wife. Right. A healthy and mature attitude, to use that same metaphor, would be, yes, I love my wife. This is the woman I'm married to. I'm so glad I'm married to her and not anyone else who I may have dated in the past. But looking back at my past and those past relationships, I could see how I learned things. I can see how I was shaped by them. I don't, there are things I regret about them, but I don't regret the whole thing. I have no ill will toward those people. Right. I wish them all the best. Right. I have Christian love for them. Right. And so I think the correct way to approach Orthodoxy is with gratitude toward where you're coming from. Right.
Yeah.
Gratitude to, and the good parts of it. Right. The things that helped bring you there, the places where God was working through it. Right.
Yeah. I think that was one of the things that was difficult for my wife at first. So she was like, well, I've experienced so much, and like, I've seen miracles and things like that. And she would think about those things. She's like, was all of that somehow fake or something? I'm like, no, that's not fake. Look at what God was doing even outside of the hospital. You know what I mean? Now imagine when you get in, what we'll see. You know what I mean? And it's already been an amazing ride so far, and it's been a short period of time. But what do you think about this illustration? Because I said this to a friend of mine, Richard Redeem Zoomer. He'd asked me a similar question about salvation outside of the church. And the way that I had put it, let me know if this is a good illustration or not. The way that I had put it to him in that conversation was something along the lines of, well, the church like is, because I guess the way, I forget how he framed it, but he was like, can Protestants be saved outside of the Orthodox Church, etc.? Because he wanted to know, because like, where do I stand with this? I'm like, well, the Orthodox Church is the hospital for sinners. Like, can you heal from your broken ribs, like sitting out just outside the hospital doors? Probably. Maybe. I mean, I guess would be the thing. Yeah. If you sat there, not probably, maybe. But would you want to take the chance? Come into the hospital. That was kind of the way that I articulated it to him. And I was like, well, and even if you never, what I said to him was, even if you never enter in, I'm praying for God to send you some med kits. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of like the little illustration that I gave him in the moment was like, well, the church is the hospital for sinners. Can you heal from broken ribs, like laying on the forest floor or something? Maybe. But wouldn't you rather come into the hospital and get healed? I don't know. What do you think about that illustration there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's good. I guess so. It's hard to discern sometimes. It depends person to person, right? What they're really after, right? So sometimes that question is coming from, it would be really difficult for me to do this, so please tell me I don't have to. Right? Yeah. Sometimes it's coming from that. I don't think the original questioner here, I don't think he's coming from that place at all. I think he's coming from a place of, I see this as something good, but I don't want to have to say that this other thing was bad. And we're not Platonists, so you don't have to say that. That's something could be good and something else can be better, right? It doesn't have to be, right? It could be more, right? So to me, if you're someone who loves Christ, you want all of Christ. Right? Yeah. You don't want just enough. You don't want a moderate amount, right? You want all of Christ. You want all of his love, all of his teaching, right? And so that's how I approach it. And if I'm trying to, cards on the table, if I'm trying to get somebody to join the Orthodox Church who's already some kind of Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's become such a slippery word, right? Like Christian now is like being a woman. You just identify as it and you are, I guess. I don't know. But some kind of, right, self-identified Christian at least.
Is it kind of like the balding question? No.
Yeah. It's right. It's not that right. I was raised among Dutch Calvinists in a Dutch community, right? I've seen what the ideas in Calvinism do to someone.
Yeah.
I've been with a Calvinist when they're dying and they have no assurance. Because they're supposed to look at their life, the life they live, and the fruit for assurance that they're elect. And they look at their life and they see nothing but sin. And they're in despair, right? And I've seen that. I want to save people from that. This isn't about me wanting to win an argument about Calvinism or prove Calvinism wrong or me being a chauvinist. My church is the best church and your church is lame, right? This is right. Like, I think people, and there are people who were more faithful to Christ, more holy than me in that context, right? But it was in spite of that, not because of that, right? Mm. And those bad ideas about God that they had in their head, right? That God was liable to see them. And I had someone tell me who was in hospice that they thought that when they stood before Christ, he was going to spit in their face and send them to hell. A person who had been an officer in their church, like their whole adult life, right? Like, I want to save this person from that bad idea of who God is, because that's not who God is. Right? That's not who God is. So I try to be very compassionate toward people, but I can be very ruthless toward institutions and systems of thought.
Yeah.
For that reason, right? Because of what they do to people who I have compassion for.
Well, I think that's very true. You're talking about PSA earlier. It is kind of like a black and white for them, because I forget who I was talking to this about. I think it was on DPH's show or something. We're talking about the presuppositions that penal substitutionary atonement does, and it's kind of like as you were saying, it's like, don't you want the fullness of the faith? Don't you want the fullness of the faith? Well, for them, it's kind of like black or white. It's like, well, you either have to answer like, am I good or am I not? Like anything in between isn't good enough of an answer. So I don't know. For those that are on the fence, come into the hospital and be healed. That's it.
And very, very little of the New Testament is about that. Mm-hmm. Very little of the New Testament is about going to heaven or hell when you die. Mm-hmm. There's a lot about how you're supposed to live in this world with other people.
Yeah, a lot of the phone calls I get, especially from the more like prominent YouTube Protestants that I used to work with, have revolved around that very specific question there. I kind of bungled my illustration earlier. I promise I gave it better in the in the private conversation. So just imagine that illustration, but shined up, nice and pretty, and delivered
elaborated, beautiful,
correcting myself and saying, "Oh no, not probably, maybe," in a shrug for But anyway, all right, let's get back into these questions here. Luca asks, hello, how can Protestants claim sola scriptura yet reject books from the Septuagint, the scriptures of Christ and the early church? Thank you.
Okay, well, I will answer that question, but first, I have to kill an urban legend. The Septuagint, the way you're referring to it, does not exist. It is not a thing. There is not a Septuagint canon. There is no such thing. That's so this is the people who told you that are guilty of an oversimplification. They're not lying to you. They're not trying to mislead you. It's just super oversimplified in a way that can be kind of misleading, right? If you just take that oversimplification and run with it without nuance, right? So technically speaking, the Septuagint, the work of the 70, that's what Septuaginta means. The work of the 70 is a reference to a translation of the Torah that was made in Alexandria in 250 BC into Greek. And the rest of the Hebrew Bible, plus some other books that didn't end up in the Hebrew Bible, were translated into Greek over the course of subsequent centuries. With a couple exceptions, like the Book of Wisdom or Wisdom of Solomon was written in Greek in the 1st century AD. Mm-hmm. And evidence of that is not just from scholarship. If you look at the earliest canon lists that include the Book of Wisdom, they list it in the New Testament because they knew it was written in Greek and they knew it was written in the 1st century. But so that's over time. So there is not sort of this one book that you can point at, right, that has a Greek canon. The correct way to refer to that first layer of Greek translations is the Old Greek, which includes the Septuagint, which is that first translation of the Torah, and then the other original Greek translations. There were, in the 1st and 2nd and 3rd centuries, attempts by 3 different Jewish folks, Aquila, Symmachus, and Theodotion, to retranslate the Hebrew into Greek to make it less Christian. Right? With varying degrees of success. Aquila is the most interesting one of those guys because he was Jewish and became a Christian and then went back to Judaism. And the reason he went back to Judaism was the Christians told him he couldn't do astrology anymore. And so he said, well, nuts to this, and went back to being Jewish because they'd let him practice astrology. Nice. So
my consolation.
Yeah, and then did this new Greek translation. So the nuances of this get really messy. For example, when we read from the book of Daniel on Holy Saturday, the version of Greek Daniel that we read from is Theodotion's retranslation. So we read a Greek translation of Daniel liturgically that was made in the 3rd century AD by a non-Christian Jew who was trying to make the text less Christian and clearly failed. But so this gets really complicated. There is not a single Old Testament canon in the Orthodox Church. What really happens in the early church is that the local Christians take the canon of the local Jews and make it their Old Testament. That's why in Ethiopia, right, the Christians in Ethiopia have this gigantic Old Testament canon because the Ethiopian Jews have this gigantic canon. And so they just took it over. Same thing in Alexandria, right? And so what's sometimes called the Septuagint canon in this oversimplification, or the Greek canon, is actually the Alexandrian Jewish canon.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up because I didn't know if I was gonna have time to get to this. People get really mad at me for kind of trashing on the canon conundrum question in apologetics. And I've always picked it apart, even when I was a Protestant. I would love when people would ask me this question because it was the easiest one for me to dive into historically, or even in modernity, and kind of pick apart and show how it doesn't quite work. But you're familiar with the canon conundrum? It's like
the what, fallible list of infallible books? Is that the?
Yeah, they try to say, so they say, well, how do you know what the canon is? If you hold the sola scriptura or something, you're going to have a fallible list of infallible books. Isn't that a contradiction or whatever? We've got an infallible list of infallible books or something, like then they would point back, and it's obviously it's a broader topic than that. It'll get into church authority.
There's bunches of problems with that. Yeah.
Right. So in my assessment, though, people get very mad at me because people will say, "Well, but the canon conundrum made me convert, so that means I'm dumb if you don't like that argument." That's not the case. If you like the argument, it's that's okay. But I don't think it's a very good argument. I still don't, especially for Orthodox to use, because if you were to look at the councils in which the canon is mentioned or defined, or people try to look at, like Trullo, it's multiple different lists, right?
Yeah.
It's different regional councils that are being affirmed there. And then if you were to look at somebody, I believe it was Ubi, brought up the Confession of Dositheus, and it was, well, but it only says the Maccabees. It doesn't tell you how many Maccabees. So where is it infallibly defined? That's kind of like my Uno reverse that I would use. So I don't know. I don't particularly think it's a convincing argument. You might be able to use it. I think a better way, it's even worse for, I think, a Roman Catholic to use the argument, because in the early church they held to a tiered distinction between the deuterocanonical books and the and the other books, but they don't do that in the modern Roman Catholic Church. In fact, Trent says it's anathema. It's
because of Trent. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and and Orthodox never had a Trent. We don't have whole. Yeah, and I mean, even in the 9th century, Saint Nicephorus of Constantinople, who was the Patriarch of Constantinople, is a saint because he's a confessor, suffered for the faith. He wrote a list of canonical and disputed and apocryphal books as of the 9th century AD. And he said there were still churches, that churches were divided on what we call the Deuterocanon now. And there were still churches that didn't accept revelation in the East, in the New Testament canon. Yeah, that's part of why it's not read liturgically in the Orthodox Church. Generally, there's a couple exceptions to that, like there is with everything. There's always nuance, but that's for the most part, it's not read liturgically. So the reality is, Luther and nobody, they didn't take books out of the Bible. In the West, there were debates. So the West, we have to remember, originally had 2 parts. They had North Africa, Latin North Africa, and Western Europe. And they were divided on canon. North Africa, Latin-speaking North Africa, followed the Alexandrian canon. So St. Augustine, for example, right? And Western Europe basically followed the Palestinian canon.
Right.
And you see that reflected like in St. Jerome. And this is why St. Jerome and St. Augustine got into it about this. Right? And so throughout the medieval West, there were debates. There were people in Rome. So we're not taking the Orthodox out of the picture, just Rome, right, in the West, on both sides of that issue with the Old Testament, all the way through history, right up to the Reformation. And then, as with most things in the Reformation, when the Reformation happens, the Protestant reformers line up on one side of the issue, and the Roman Catholic Church retrenches on the other side of the issue. Right? What previously was an in-house debate, right, gets split like that. That happens on the Eucharist with the Lutherans. That happens like a whole bunch of issues.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even in the Latin West, you see like Pope Gregory basically parroting the opinion of Jerome on the canon with the distinctions as well. Oftentimes, I don't want to get too much in the weeds because people get really, really upset when I talk about the canon. I don't know why. Maybe it's because that's how they knew of my channel when I was a Protestant. So it's like
all weeds on this, man.
It's giving them like World War II flashback, like Vietnam flashbacks. Me talking about the canon, but yeah, I mean that was a subject that I was super interested in studying. But I appreciate the comments on the Septuagint, because that was something that I had said for quite some time. It's not like there was one set corpus, right? So anyway, but we have a lot of different questions to get into, so I'll keep it rolling. We got Dirt Poor Robbins in the chat. How's it going? Good to see you, Neil. I got a whole bunch of different people in the chat that I know.
I met him at Pajot Fest.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, speaking of I guess conferences, there's going to be one coming up. If y'all are interested, check this out. I will be there. It will be on the 21st. It's the Athens and Jerusalem Orthodox Art and Philosophy conference. There's going to be Jay speaking there, Father Deacon Ananias, a bunch of different people speaking there. So if you want to check that out, I believe Jay said he opened it up for even more people to get tickets. It was completely sold out, but they have a couple more spaces available. So if you want to check that out and go to the conference and hang out with us, feel free to check it out. All right. Just got done reading St. Ignatius' epistles and starting Epistle to the Philippians by Polycarp tonight. Also have Justin Martyr on deck. Who is your favorite with the first to second century martyrs to read?
Probably St. Justin. Saint Justin was Palestinian. He was from Nablus. And even though, like, in his dialogue with Trypho is clearly an invented character, like in Plato's dialogue, he has a lot more knowledge of Judaism than people give him credit for. If you have a good understanding of what first and early second century Judaism actually looked like, which isn't exactly like your local synagogue today. Go figure. Then there's a lot of depth and richness there in terms of what he's doing and the arguments he's making and what he's trying to demonstrate in terms of Christianity being the real continuation of Second Temple Jewish religion and not Rabbinic Judaism.
Let me see. Here you go. Question. Proverbs differ notably between the LXS and the MT with chapter variations, omissions, additions. Which textual tradition is more reliable? How does textual criticism from the OT impact sola scriptura?
So the what we have to realize is that the Old Testament, I prefer to talk about Old Testament and New Testament traditions. One of the things people have from the West is this idea that we got to find the one text, right? Like this one, this is it, right? This is the real one, and anything that varies from this is wrong and an error. And that's not really the way it was for like the apostles and the earliest fathers. So, for example, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, Jeremiah, right, radically different in Greek Jeremiah and Masoretic text Jeremiah. Greek text is about 2/3 the length, and the material they have in common is completely rearranged in one or the other, right? But we found Hebrew copies of both versions in the Dead Sea Scrolls, side by side. So apparently they didn't think one was real and one was fake, right? They thought they had two different collections of the prophecies of Jeremiah. And if you watch, like, say, St. Paul, we have a really good writing sample, right? Like St. James, we have one epistle, but St. Paul, we have him writing a fair amount on a fair number of topics, right? And what you find him doing is he will quote the Greek version. He will do his own Greek translation from Hebrew. He will do half and half. He will sort of whatever best suits his needs, right? And he will throw in extra biblical traditions. St. Paul just casually drops them in all the time, right? Like 1 Corinthians, he says, Israel had a rock that followed them in the wilderness, and that rock was Christ. It's like, wait, followed them? Huh? Well, you start reading Midrash, you find out that they were like, well, they get water from the rock at the beginning. 40 years later, they get water from the rock at the end. Where were they getting their water in the desert all that time? So there's this tradition that the rock followed them, right? In the wilderness. St. Paul just refers to this casually.
Yeah.
Right? He'll refer to stuff from the Aramaic Targums just casually. He doesn't say, now this isn't in scripture, but traditionally the names of the magicians of Pharaoh were Janus and Jambres, right? Like he doesn't make that distinction. So we have an Old Testament tradition. We have a New Testament tradition because we've got a variety of New Testament manuscripts that the Holy Spirit has preserved for us down to this day. And we've got different translations and different versions, and all of these things, all of this richness is ours and part of our heritage. So we should feel free to access and draw from all of it, right? We don't have to pick one and say, this is the real one, right? And everything else is set aside. So I think both Greek Proverbs and Hebrew Proverbs are both good, right? And we should read both, and we should understand both and look at the differences in both between them, because the differences may be edifying, right? And maybe we may find important things there. When you learn Hebrew, especially, you learn that the Hebrew Bible is full of word plays and rhymes and word plays and words that can mean two different things that are used ambiguously on purpose, right? To suggest multiple different levels of meaning. Like, they do that all the time. And because the authors of the New Testament are all Semitic language speakers first, they're kind of thinking in Hebrew and Aramaic and writing in Greek. They try to do the same thing as much as they can in Greek, right? So you get things like Christ's conversation with Nicodemus. Is he saying you need to be born again or born from above? Yes. Right? Yes. Anothen can mean either one of those things, right? So yeah, I think that's good. I don't know how well you can comport that with Sola Scriptura. I'm not defending Sola Scriptura. I don't have to defend Sola Scriptura, so that's not a problem for me. But I know a professor who got fired from Westminster Seminary for suggesting what I just said. So there are some proponents of Sola Scriptura who think that is incompatible, but that's the reality of the situation. That's not just me putting forward an argument. That's just the reality of the Bible as we have it.
People are asking, Cleve, are you ever having Father Damick on? I said, if I knew how to reach out to him. So maybe if you want to pass along a message.
I can get you in touch with him. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'd love to have him.
If you've had me, I don't know why you need him, but yeah.
Yeah. There you go. All right, you heard it here.
Yeah.
It's impossible. Can't happen now. All right, let's see. Colt asks, I got your book on the Apocrypha. It's great. Also, is there any other canon lists that are similar to Saint Nicephorus? Good grief, Saint Nicephorus, such as books for private reading?
You have to practice pronouncing Greek names.
I pronounce everything wrong. Literally everything.
Well, the key is you just have to do it really confidently.
Yeah.
And hope that nobody else knows how to do it either, and so they'll just assume you're doing it correctly.
Yeah, there you go. I'm like, okay, Saint. Okay, perfect. I did it.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to be able to tell Axenogoras from Athenagoras, right? Like that's.
Yeah. There you go. Perfect.
Well, there are obviously earlier canon lists than Saint Nicephorus's. There aren't many of them that specifically list things as apocryphal, but even like the Muratorian canon says about the Shepherd of Hermas, he says, well, this isn't really on the level of the New Testament text. He says, because it was written recently, and then he identifies for us who wrote it. It was like the Bishop of Rome's nephew, I think. He's like, so who was the last bishop of Rome, his nephew wrote it. Like, we know him. That's not part of the Bible. So I mean, that's even kind of listing a book as being apocrypha, right? Like, it's spiritual reading, but it's not, right, canonical. So the reason I used Saint Nicephorus's list for that book was because of that, because I think it's sort of the best presentation, and it's 9th century, so it's representing sort of, it's not in this period where the canon is forming. The canon, in terms of what's being read publicly in the church, is fully formed by the 9th century. The lectionary is even kind of in place by the 9th century. So it gives us sort of a mature picture of how these extra biblical texts were looked at that point, right? After the discussions of canonicity were mostly over.
Justin Harris, I don't see a question from you. If you're still in the chat,
he just wanted to give you money.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'll take it. But if you for real though, if you have a question, put it in the chat and I'll pull it up next. Let's see. Oh, there you go. He sent it in again. Question: inquiring into Eastern Orthodoxy. Well, this is a good stream for you then, for some time, but have become increasingly convicted of Oriental Orthodoxy's view of Chalcedon. Thoughts?
Well, I need to know what you think the Chalcedon is saying, and what you think the Oriental Orthodox are saying about it. The core of what Chalcedon teaches, the simplest way to put it, and this is using their language. This is not me summarizing. This is me extracting the piece that I think makes it the easiest to understand for the statement issued by the fathers of the council is, according to his divinity, Christ is consubstantial with the Father, and according to his humanity, he's consubstantial with us. Okay, so let's set aside how we're going to define the word nature, right? Don't have to use the word nature. He's consubstantial with the Father according to his divinity, consubstantial with us according to his humanity. And I've gotten Oriental Orthodox folks to agree with me that that's true. And so then I'm like, so what's...
Yeah. Except Chalcedon.
So what's your big deal, right? What's
Yeah.
your issue? That's what it's
that's been my take too. When you hear, well, it's one composite nature versus two natures, one hypostasis, and then you're just redefining words, right?
Yes, it's two different definitions. So in general, here's the thing. So the word nature, physis, is coined in the 4th century BC, essentially. In Greece, it's used philosophically to refer to the concept of heredity. That's when they discover the concept of heredity, that an organism inherits traits from its parents, right? Not just physically, like they saw that people physically look like their parents, and they had reasoning for that, but more than that, right? And so they start to argue that with humans, and the form that takes, say, in Aristotle is there are people who are naturally slaves. That's their nature. Their nature is to be slaves. And there are other people whose nature is to rule, and other people whose nature is to be craftsmen, and but each individual has a nature. It is the nature of that guy, right? That person, their particular bent, and that will be passed on to their progeny. And so, and that goes to everything. The Athenians had a different nature than the Spartans, right? Like, St. Paul takes that concept, because that concept, the word nature does not occur in the Greek Old Testament, except for one time in 3rd Maccabees. Then we can get into that if you really want to get into the weeds, but for the most part, it doesn't occur anywhere in the Greek Old Testament, because it doesn't really translate anything in Hebrew. But St. Paul picks it up, and St. Paul picks it up to make a particular argument. And it's part of the argument we find him making, like in Acts 17. He makes this to the Gentiles all the time. From one man, God created all the peoples of the world. This is totally different than what the pagans thought. The Greeks, right, the Athenians thought that the Athenians were created by Athena from the soil around the city of Athens. Right? They all had different origins and different natures, right? And St. Paul is saying, no, God created everyone from one man. He created all the peoples of the world, meaning there is one human nature. This is why he can say things like, before Christ, there is no slave or free, right? Male or female, Jew or Greek, right? He's not removing those differences. Those differences still exist. He's still a Jew and not a Greek, right? He's still a man and not a woman, right? But in terms of our standing before God, our human nature is one. Okay. So when it comes to Chalcedon, St. Cyril of Alexandria had used, being an Alexandrian, being educated in Greek philosophy, had used the term nature in its philosophical sense when it came to Christ. He'd use nature to mean like person. The nature of this person, Jesus Christ. There's one person, Jesus Christ. What is his nature? The nature of that person, right? Whereas Chalcedon is using nature in the sense that St. Paul uses it. According to his humanity, Christ shares that one human nature with all of us. He's consubstantial with all of us. And in terms of his divinity, he is of the same nature as the Father and the Spirit. Okay. And so the term nature is being used in two different ways. And the non-Chalcedonians have held on to this. St. Cyril used this word the right way, and that's the only way you're allowed to use that word. Right? Rather than understanding the different way, the way St. Paul uses it, right? Which gives it some biblical warrant for the council to use it that same way, to mean something different.
Yeah, a lot of these debates I find. Also, I'm just looking at the time here. You okay to go another 30 minutes?
Yeah, no, I'm good for as long as you want to go.
Okay,
I'm
because I
good
know
till you tap out.
there's five more super chats I want to get to, and then any inquirer questions that pop
And
up.
one little note on that. Me talking about that was a very long roundabout philosophical way to say what St. John of Damascus says in his Fount of Wisdom in a much more pithy way, where he just says nature is being used in two different ways and defines the two ways. Yeah. That is
kind of what it seems like to me, which is like, well, is that enough to really schism over, you know?
No, I don't think that's what the schism is over. I think the schism is over the fact that, frankly, the emperor chose to use state violence to try and enforce the council's decision.
Yeah.
And so when people have died over something, it makes it really hard to say, oh, it was just a misunderstanding.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder why. I wonder how much it would take for reconciliation now. But I mean, I guess we could pray for it.
Yeah. A lot of it, the Oriental Orthodox churches are not really unified with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the Coptic Church right now is not even unified with itself.
Right, yeah.
They're two radically different theological factions. So they really need to kind of all get on the same page before we can try and hash this out.
We can't do like the coffee hour tactic where you just wait for one of them to be a little by themselves away from their buddies. Hey,
yeah, we'll just wait for the Armenian Catholicos to be isolated by himself, and we'll
hey, come hang out with
us. Come on, man! Look at the nature. Come on.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah, I like that. That's funny. Alex Soren, good to see you, man. Father Stephen, in the debate with Gavin, you cited the Jerusalem Talmud for icon veneration. Do you have a more specific citation for that? Love your work.
I will email that. I don't have it off the top of my head. I'll email that to Ben, and he can post it somewhere. That's and let you know. But yeah, there is it wasn't really a debate. It was a discussion. And it wasn't supposed to be about iconography. It was supposed to be about scripture.
Nice.
But I felt like he didn't feel like the Sola Scriptura discussion was going the way he wanted it to at the beginning, and so he changed the topic to something he felt maybe he had more ammunition on. But yeah, the Jerusalem Talmud condemns people who line up to kiss idols. And I made the point that pagans didn't do that. Like, that's not how idolatry worked in a pagan setting. So I don't know what that could be other than a Jewish condemnation of Christians venerating icons. So
let's see.
But yeah, to anyone who thinks icons are idolatry, that's not how idolatry worked. They didn't line up and go kiss a statue of Zeus. That's not what they did in pagan temples.
Right.
At all.
There's a video that I'm going to try to do soon if I can get the gentleman to agree. There was someone who did a study into this pseudo-Dionysian corpus, but he was saying that there's, I guess, new scholarly evidence that it may actually be genuine, at least in certain parts.
It's a lot earlier. If you know, it knows too much about Second Temple Judaism to be 6th century Syrian.
Mm-hmm.
The 6th century in Syria, they didn't know anything about Second Temple Judaism anymore.
Right.
Directly. And he's referencing stuff in there. So I've always thought latest it could be is 3rd century. Absolute latest.
Right. Yeah, they were that'll be an interesting show if I ever get him to come on, because he just published the whole paper on the subject. So I'd like to have him come on and pick his brain, and then maybe I'll just frame it with the doctrines it would prove
Yeah.
apostolicity of. Because
Yeah.
I mean, that would be huge if that was the case. Imagine, I mean, just for icon veneration alone, if you can
Yeah.
prove that's genuine, even, I mean, if it was actually him that wrote it, not a pseudo, that would be even bigger. So I don't know. I'll have to see the extent of what he goes over in the paper, but that might be an interesting show to check out. A little more, maybe a little more scholarly than the Q&A streams, but I think you guys can handle a little meat maybe. All right, let's see. Anyone who wants to understand the Bible origin should read the whole counsel of God. It makes it very easy to understand. Well, thank you for the recommendation.
Thank you for the potential royalties if anyone buys that book of mine.
There you go. Rabbis say no images or pictograms of God, yet Manus Day appears in a pre-Christian Syrian synagogue. Same mindset within EO. Questions NT Trinity icons never formally ruled as non-canonical or regulated. I'm trying to pick that apart.
I think he's trying to go for, like, it's okay to depict God the Father in icons.
I'm not sure.
Which it's not. But there's a really good book that St. Vladimir's Press, St. Vladimir Seminary Press, published years ago. I think it's still in print though, or you can find used copies. Called The Image of God the Father, an Orthodox tradition. And he says in the preface, he's like, two things are very clear when you come into the Orthodox Church. One, you are not allowed to depict God the Father in icons. And two, if you go to many Orthodox churches, you'll see icons of God the Father. And so the book is, why is this the case? And he goes through and traces sort of how that happened.
Yeah.
But the Holy Synod of Moscow in 1666 outright condemned it. And many of the other canons applying to iconography, at least sideways, condemn it because, for example, so this is, for example, right? There's no technical condemnation of statuary, right? Mm-hmm. There's no Orthodox canons against statuary. Why don't we have statues like they do in the West? Well, because we do have canonical rules that say all iconography has to follow the ancient models. Meaning for us to make statues, they would have to follow the ancient, like if we were going to make a statue of Christ, it would have to follow the model of ancient statues of Christ, of which we don't have any.
Interesting. Doesn't the Russian Orthodox military cathedral have a statue of Jesus?
Well, so there's stuff, there's like bas relief, there's three-dimensional stuff.
Right.
All over the place because there is no rule, right? But you have to follow the ancient models, right? You're not allowed to use your imagination.
Right.
Whereas what comes out of the Frankish theology, the Libri Carolini, the weird reception history of the Seventh Ecumenical Council in the West is all bets are off with iconography. You can use your imagination, and that's why you get the religious art in the West that you get, right?
Yeah. So you mean to tell me we can't expect any modern art style Vatican II churches? I was looking at, I did a stream a long time ago looking at like a compilation of crazy post Vatican II churches. Even the cathedrals. That was the first cathedral they ever made after Vatican II. It looked like wild. It was like almost looked like a smokestack or something. And there was one that looked like a tusk. Coming up out of, it's just a big tusk coming up out of the ground, like very strange architecture.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. Now you will, well, I don't know if you will anymore. So 25 years ago, you could go around, if you went to like old Greek churches, especially in small towns, you'd sometimes see some iconography where you looked at it and went, this kind of looks like 1950s Roman Catholic bulletin art, you know? And that was because they came here, they were the only Orthodox people, and so they hired somebody to do something kind of like iconography. But every one of those churches I know of, they're all replacing it with Byzantine. Like they realize, you know, hey, this isn't really the thing. Mm-hmm. You know, it was the best we could do at the time out on the frontier, you know. So you can find a little bit of that. You can find stuff that looks a little Western-ish. There's some Russian stuff that kind of looks that way, but more and more, even that's getting replaced by more correct, more canonical iconography.
Interesting. All right. Luca asks, is it true is it true the Our Father reflects Sirach 28:2 from the Apocrypha, forgive your neighbor's injustice, then your own sins will be forgiven when you pray?
Yes.
There you go.
Christ also basically quotes Sirach when he says, take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's something wisdom says in Sirach. That's not the controversial part of Sirach. The controversial part of Sirach is when he says all women are evil. Direct quote.
You know what was funny when I when I was reading through Sirach for the first time as a Protestant, and my wife was in the same room. I'm like, look, kind of based. I don't know, I was like, it's kind of based. I can't. I might be getting convinced. But yeah, it was funny. She was like, be quiet,
Yeah, Sirach was actually in the Masoretic text, or what became the Masoretic text, the Proto-Masoretic text, until the late 2nd century.
Dub has an interesting question, worded very strangely, but he asked a very interesting question. So I guess he's asking about the divorce economy within like the application of economy within Orthodox Church. But he says if Catholics believe annulments exist and they allow that once due to non-church affiliation, I don't know if that once is true though. I've seen them happen more than that. So I don't think that once is true, Dub.
I just keep getting not really married over and over again.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard people get multiple annulments due to non-church affiliation or something. No, it's way worse than non-church affiliation. There was
80% of annulments are approved.
Yeah, a ton of them
in the U.S. 80%.
They have within their guidelines for approving annulments things as simple. I'll pull that back up in just a second, but things as simple as she wasn't as like her social status wasn't what I thought it was when I married her. Yeah. Like things as basic as that. So you can get an annulment for basically anything. I mean, it's like I thought she lost
her looks.
Yeah, she lost her looks or something. I thought she was like Kardashian famous. She was actually just Instagram famous. So, can I get the annulment anyway?
And that's within the guidelines. That's not even cheating, right? Yeah. Which we know happens with money changes hands and stuff.
Well, what I think about that is if you have kids with them, like, are those kids now illegitimate? Like, are they not?
Yes.
Because it's not a real. You're saying it's not a real marriage. You're saying it never happened. So it's kind of interesting. All right, but anyway, due to non-church affiliation or something. ... How does Orthodox allow 3 wives? 3 wives? Whoa! No, that's not right.
Well, we don't allow 3 wives, right? We don't even allow 2.
Yeah.
Because Christ said, "No man can serve 2 masters." So, that's a joke.
Yeah, I got that. Okay. Clip that right there.
No, so yeah, this is one of the most evil things about Roman Catholicism, and I mean it when I say evil. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the area I'm in down here is 70% Roman Catholic. Okay, and Roman Catholicism, when they wield social power, is a very different beast than when it's just the one Catholic church in your Baptist town. Especially when it comes to stuff like this. It's sort of like Mormons in Salt Lake City versus Mormons in Phoenix, right? Like it's different things happening. So the Orthodox Church doesn't give divorces, we penance divorces. Okay. But we deal with reality. When someone gets a divorce, we say, you got a divorce. That's a sin. You're going to be cut off from the Eucharist for a period of time. Right? And then you're going to repent. You're going to have this period of repentance and working through it. And then you'll eventually be readmitted to the Eucharist because divorce, like every other sin, is forgivable. If you're Roman Catholic, divorce, especially remarriage, is the unforgivable sin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I don't know where you get that in Scripture. That's, Christ says, Moses let you get a divorce because of the hardness of your hearts. And apparently now no one is hard-hearted in any of our churches. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, right. So we penance divorce. And then if someone wants to get remarried in the church, they have to go to their priest. They have to petition the bishop. The priest writes a letter saying whether he thinks the bishop should say yes or no. So the priest could basically deep six the whole thing, right, in the situation. And then the bishop decides yes or no for that particular situation. If you are allowed to get married the second time, you don't just have another wedding.
Mm-hmm.
There is a rite of second marriage. That rite of second marriage, you don't do it in the church, you do it in a chapel. The bride is not allowed to wear a wedding dress. She has to just wear a regular dress. Okay. The service quotes texts of scripture talking about the repentant prostitute, talking about it is better to be married than burn with lust. This is what you're praying and saying to them as you're doing this second marriage. It is a penitential rite of second marriage. Okay. Saying this is not the ideal, but this is the best we can make of this bad situation for your salvation. Like saying that out loud, right? And being very aware of it, right? Okay. If you get divorced that second time, and if somehow, and this is very rare, this almost never occurs, that someone gets approved for a third marriage, right? It is not done in the church or a chapel. It's done like in the narthex or in another venue. No one is allowed any special clothing. No guests are invited. And you read one prayer. It is like a paragraph. Right? Okay. That's what happens in the Orthodox Church. That's how the Orthodox Church works. The canon is divorce is a sin and you can't get remarried. Exceptions can be made in particular instances. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's it. Here's what happens in the Roman Catholic Church. You get married, you have 3 kids, you're married for 15 years, you decide to get divorced, you send a letter and a few $100s to your local Catholic archbishop who's right over there. There's a cemetery across the street from my house and the headquarters is on the other side. And they give you an annulment which says you were never married. The whole marriage never happened. So the divorce never happened. There was no sin. There was nothing to repent of. The whole thing was imaginary, and your kids are all technically illegitimate, right? And now you could go and have another wedding, full wedding, because you've never been married before. Mm-hmm. Right? And you could get those annulments until someone decides to disapprove of one. Right. And then you start your own church like Henry VIII.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
until someone decides,
then you get Anglicans.
Yes. Basically. And you have good, pious Catholic people who don't have a lot of money here. Okay. I bring a lot of these people into my church, frankly, who get divorced, sometimes not of their own choosing. Right? Get divorced, sometimes not of their own choosing. Don't have the connections to get an annulment. Right? And if they do get remarried, have to get married outside the church, can never receive the Eucharist again for the rest of their life. And if they get married and have kids, the Catholic churches here won't baptize their children. Mm. And these are churches that teach that unbaptized children who die go to hell.
Yeah.
And they won't baptize these people's children for the sins of their parents. No repentance possible. Okay? This is evil. This is just a pack of lies. Okay? Annulments, this whole annulment system is a pack of lies. It's a lie about reality. It's saying the marriage and divorce never happened when clearly they did. Right? It's lies on top of lies on top of lies, and it's abuse on the people who can't navigate that bureaucratic Roman Catholic system. Whereas the Orthodox system deals with reality.
Yep. The
reality of sinful people and trying to reconnect them to God when they've sinned and fallen away.
Mm-hmm. I can't find the comment, but this gentleman said that he was going to his night shift. He was asking for a blessing, if he received a blessing. There you go. All right, let's see. Here you go. I like you guys. Thanks, man. I don't know you, but I like you too.
Yeah.
Because you sent me money. So thank you.
I have no taste, but I like you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. All right, let's see. My wife and I, big chops in the house. My wife and I converted to Orthodoxy this past Pascha. Can you, any tips for converts from evangelicalism to begin to acquire an Orthodox mindset? God bless. I think I need glasses now. Sometimes I got to squint to read these after I've been doing it for like 2 hours.
I'm 50 now, so I definitely need reading glasses. So I'm glad you're reading these questions. I'd be going.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, sometimes I read them good, and then I'm just like, what? But anyway.
Yeah, so really what the ritual life of the church does is reshape your mindset. So everybody has a grid through which they receive and interpret the world. And that's formed by things, right? And sort of the big four things that I'm going down my master's in philosophy rabbit trail. The four things that form that are art, music, language, and ritual. Those things that we intake all shape the grid through which we view everything. Okay? And you can think about that in negative sense too, right? So that art category, if what you're looking at is pornography on the internet, that's going to shape how you view other human beings. It's not going to be a conscious thing, right? It's going to be an unconscious thing. It's this grid, right? When you see a woman after that, when you see a man after that, it's going to shape how you see them and interact with them. Music, what music you're listening to, right? Language, the kind of language, not just what language you speak, but which is included, but the kind of language you use to describe things, right? All of that shapes it. But ritual is the one of those that can be the most intentional, right? And ritual also tends to include the others. So if you're talking about going to liturgy, you're going to be surrounded by iconography. You're going to be hearing liturgical chant. You're going to be hearing liturgical language and the language of prayer, describing God, describing the world, describing you, right? So it sort of includes all of those others, and it's done repetitively in a way that shapes you. And so beyond attending the services of the church, it's very important. He said his wife and him, so we've got a family here. It's very important that that ritual life and that regularity of ritual life also be in the home.
Yes.
Right? Praying together in the morning and evening, that you have these regular cycles, because those are going to shape you if and when you have kids, right? It's going to shape them as they're growing up. It's going to shape the way they see the world, right? And there are benefits to being shaped that way in the first place when you're a kid, as opposed to us adults having to sort of reconfigure and jettison a lot of bad stuff that shaped us in bad ways, right? To try and get back on track, if you can get that from the beginning. So that's the biggest thing, is try to be at church as much as you can, but then also bring that into the home and have the regular disciplined cycles, right? Of that shape your life, right? And orient your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I've certainly realized that myself too, kind of stepping into this. I mean, I always had like I would use the Book of Common Prayer, but praying using icons and that kind of thing was relatively somewhat new to me, stepping into seeking into the Orthodox Church and that kind of stuff. So I'm glad in my studio here I had a queen-sized bed here. And I wanted to make sure my my icon corner faces the right direction. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm getting this bed out of here. So now the room is clear. So I can finally set up a nice icon corner here. So I'm excited to begin to add that into the kind of the daily ritual of doing the morning, evening prayers, so on and so forth. So that'll be really cool.
Yeah, and instead of everybody going off and saying and praying and having devotion time, right? Having a place where you gather in your house, right? In the icon corner, and come together and stand and pray intentionally. Yeah. Me and
my daughter, she loves praying using the icons. I got her this triptych with Theotokos and Jesus, and it's got two angels on the side. But we have a cat, so she has to put it away and then take it out. So the cat will mess it up if I leave it out. She puts it in a drawer, the icon, and then takes it out. Takes extra special care. and we pray together, each night before she goes to sleep and that kind of thing. So she loves praying with the icons and stuff like that. So she is all about it. She's excited. Sarah from Rose 7 says, "Hey, Ben, we spoke a few days ago on X. I'm Josh. Just want to let you know that you and the Eastern Orthodox lawyer guy helped me overcome my issues. I am now an Antiochian Orthodox catechumen. Thank you." Hey, God bless you.
Congratulations.
Glad to hear that, man. Let's see. What else do I have here? Oh, Alex Soren. Oh, that's the Eastern Orthodox lawyer guy. I will follow up
for the guy.
Yeah, that's the guy right there. It's a small world. I will follow up for the source. LOL. Thanks, Father. That was for his previous question where he's asking about the Talmud or something like that. All right. When did plural marriage stop in Orthodoxy?
Plural marriage, you mean like polygamy?
Yeah. I don't know what he means by that.
There was never polygamous Christian marriage. There were Jewish groups doing polygamy until the 10th century. But there was never polygamy within Christianity.
Mm-hmm. Correct. All right. So let me see if there's any other inquirer questions before we wrap up here. This gentleman here, you asked a question. You're an inquirer. But rewind it about 30 minutes because we just talked about this exact same thing.
Okay.
And I talked about it in the last live stream as well, and the one before that, and the one before that as well. So this is a very common question, very common situation. If you want to check out an entire video where I interview somebody on this subject, I had Frederica Matthews Green on it, and she was talking about her experience when her husband was entering into the Orthodox Church, and she had some reservations. So maybe you can get some inspiration on what to do in that dialogue there. Because I thought that was interesting to get that from the perspective of the wife. Because obviously I'm not a woman, so I don't know how that I don't know how that.
It's good that you're clear on that.
Yes, that's clear. Hey, these days you have to be clear. Yeah. All right. Well, this was answered at the beginning of the stream. So if you want to rewind, Mitch.
No, that was, I think, the very first question.
Yeah, that might have been the very first question. So go back to the beginning of the stream, and he actually answered that. Oh, Thatcher Chai asked a question.
That's my friend Jacob.
Oh, nice.
He's Orthodox Jewish.
Nice. He says, "I've been interested in Orthodox Christianity for years now. So my best friends are Orthodox, but I'm Jewish. If I become an Orthodox Christian, where do I find him in Yon?"
I'm pretty sure. I mean, we might have to convene a bunch of people from different parts of the country, but I'm pretty sure we could get a minion of Jewish Orthodox Christians together if we really tried.
There you go. Let's see. Is there any other inquirer questions in here? Neil asks, best Orthodox lawyer / apologist and best Orthodox band. That's kind of leading, isn't it? Well, Dirt Poor Robins, best Orthodox band. There you go.
There we go.
Best Orthodox lawyer, Alex Soren.
Yeah, who was just here. Yes.
Done. Easy question. And Neil will be at the conference too, so that'll be cool. Almost everybody in the chat's going to be at the conference. Everybody just come on. Let's go. We'll all hang out together. What is a rule for priesthood candidates who had a civil or heterodox marriage and later divorced? In the past, widowed priests could not remain in a parish.
Yeah, so under all normal circumstances, that's if you are divorced at all, regardless of whether you were in the Orthodox Church at the time or not, you are not eligible for ordination. I know of a handful of cases where exceptions were made for divorces that were before someone was in the Orthodox Church. In one of those cases, the man in question had been abandoned by his wife. They had been married for all of 2 weeks. And she left him and ran off with another man. But even in that case, and this was before he joined the Orthodox Church, but even in that case, he was ordained and made the priest at a particular parish where they needed a priest. And that was the only church he could serve as a priest at. Like, he wasn't sort of eligible to go wherever. It was, we have this very particular need. He lives here in this town and is part of this community. He otherwise would be a good candidate. So in this particular instance, for this particular need, we'll overlook that. So that's almost never done. Widowed priests have the option of going to a monastery. Many of them continue in parishes. Some of them are made bishops. So the Orthodox understanding of these things is that being married and having sexual relations with your wife is not sinful in any way, shape, or form. And therefore it does not disqualify anyone from anything. The reason we have celibate bishops is just the lifestyle that's demanded of a bishop in the Orthodox Church. The travel, the responsibilities that are involved are not commensurate with trying to care for a wife and raise children and those kind of things in the way that one is expected to do, right? As a responsible husband and father. But that means that, for example, there's a bishop in the Antiochian Archdiocese right now who's a widower. Lots of Russian bishops are widowers. If the wife has passed away and the children are adults, so that he's not responsible for them immediately anymore, that frees up his time, and he's able to be a bishop.
Did you hear about the wasn't there a Roman Catholic bishop that was found to have it was like civilly married or something? That was something that popped up recently.
A Roman Catholic? Oh, well, there was an Orthodox bishop who did that back in there was this Archbishop of Timios Ophache, who was from the Middle East, who one day went off and married a 19-year-old who he'd been tutoring, and of course was immediately deposed, right? Like instantaneously. But apparently got hung out to dry. Apparently he and two other bishops had decided, we think we should have married bishops, so we're all going to go and get married, and then he's the only one who went through with it. So he got cut off. But if you go to a lot of these kooky quasi-Orthodox groups in the US, who call themselves Orthodox, and it's some guy who named himself Metropolitan and he's in his garage or something, as his cathedral. And you go and look at their lines of succession, they almost all go back to Efthymios Ophache. Because when they deposed him, he just continued to call himself a bishop and went around ordaining people and
interesting.
Doing whatever.
That's an interesting grift.
Yeah. So
selling apostolic succession.
Yes. Which he didn't have because he had been deposed. But
yeah, that's rough. That's definitely simony for sure. Let's see. I am hold on. I am an inquirer from Sonora, Mexico. The closest parish is about 4 hours away in Arizona, but we're waiting on papers to cross over. Should we stop attending our non-denominational church in the interim?
Honestly, I would say in most cases, yes. I don't know all the details. I mean, especially if you've got like a wife and kids, I would say yes. Because if you're intending to take the kids in a different direction, it's just going to make it harder for them, right? With the whiplash and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I would start doing, make a prayer corner, get a good prayer book, right? Start doing the prayers at home as a family. Some of the readers' vespers, there's reader services that you can do together as a family. Start doing some of those things in sort of preparation for that.
Here's a good question here. Casey, sorry, I skipped over yours by accident. What is a good practice for holding one's tongue in a friend group of Protestant/evangelicals who tend to ask me questions often? Outside of telling them to come and see, don't want to dump theology?
Yeah. Well, part of this is a discernment thing. You want to answer honest questions, but if you're dealing with a friend group, a lot of the times it's not honest questions. It's people who like debating, and that's fine, right? Like I used to be one of those people. Um, that's you're just like having theological arguments. Certain segments of Protestantism, I'm looking at you Presbyterians, are kind of debate clubs. And if there's that, and you don't feel like dabbling in that and potentially throwing pearls before swine, you're not required to do that. If they're honest, if you perceive that all though that they're honest questions, that they're looking for information, they're looking to understand the Orthodox Church more, right? Then you should by all means respond. But sport debating is, you don't have to play that any more than you have to play pickup basketball. It's purely up to you.
Sport debate all your friends. It definitely converts them.
I have not found that to be the case, but your mileage may vary.
Yeah, that's true. I would say more often than not, probably, especially if you're like somebody like trying to convince your wife or something. That's definitely never going to work. I don't think, unless she's super like, I don't know, unless she's super into it too, and she's kind of, she likes the debate, she's intellectual like that. But most women, I don't think that's ever going to be the case. With your guy friends, depends on your dynamic. I don't know. For me, I kind of need rougher handling. I think, I remember
you
one
enjoy
time,
it, like I said, go for it, right?
Yeah.
It's like you enjoy playing pickup basketball, play pickup basketball,
Yeah, exactly. I remember, like sometimes with different people, you have different approaches, right? Like I need more direct. Like that's me. Like, I can't, if you want to tell me something, you want to convince me of something, be direct about it. Don't just say like, oh, well, you know what, I'm gonna like softly massage this idea. Like, no, dude, it's not going to sink in. For me, I remember when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I had put on a lot of weight because I'd stopped playing sports for a while. So I was actually pretty fit. And then I put on some weight. My cousin would come up to me and he would grab my love handle. And I was like, okay, all right, it's time to lose weight. Like sometimes with some certain people need a little, a little directness, but that's not the case for everybody, which is why you have people on Twitter, which are like, I hate the debaters. The debaters are evil, but it's like, okay, come on. Well, then, why are
it's not your thing? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not your thing. That's right. Well, that's okay.
That's what I say to people when they come around and like they have some issue with Jay Dyer, and I'm like, just let Jay Dyer be Jay Dyer, right? If that's not your thing, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Go watch a different show.
Let him do his thing. Like
exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I find it that honestly kind of irks me. Like the individuals that will, I don't know, try to like, it almost seems kind of like backbitey. Like they're like, I don't like your style, so I'm going to backbite you. It's like, just go watch a different show. Come on.
Yeah.
Art he asks, or he says, haha, father, just brought up the question of renovationism in the US. Kudrowski was an interesting name too. He even made his son succeed him.
I think he was talking about when I was talking about the churches changing out the iconography and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Oh, here you go. Thank you, Father. Feels like most of the time they're genuine, but that helps me a lot. Perfect. All right, let's see. Any other Inquirer questions in here before we wrap up? If there is anybody, or I'll tell you what, because I've got like a zillion of these questions starred, and I don't know if they're still in the chat, but if you are in the chat and you are an Inquirer, send your question in now, and I'll get to one last one on here. So if somebody's in the chat and you're an Inquirer, you're on the fence, send your question in here, and you will be the lucky final questioner. But I do these streams all the time, so stay tuned. Okay, here you go. Perfect. Contemporary Compendium. Question. How do you answer people that say the altar to the unknown God in Athens that Paul writes about is evidence that Muslims, Hindus, etc., all unknowingly worship the Christian God in their own way?
Yeah, I'm waiting to see which cardinal gets sent to Pakistan to tell them that Muslims and Hindus worship the same God. and then it's the Catholic God. That should go over really well in Pakistan.
Yeah. That's rough.
So, yeah. Well, I mean, what do I say to those people? I say that's dumb.
Yeah,
because that's wildly out of context, right? So we're dealing with Athens, Greco-Roman paganism, really Roman paganism. They believed in regional and local deities, right? We have this view of like this pantheon that's like the Justice League or something, of these like superpowered beings with different powers, you know, like these 12 guys, right?
Yeah.
Who sit on top of Mount Olympus. That's not what they believed at all, right? They'd been to the top of Mount Olympus. It's not that tall. They knew there weren't guys in togas hanging out there. Like, there were regionally. So if you were in Athens, you're worshiping Athena and Hephaestus. Those were your local gods, right? And if you moved and you lived somewhere else, you'd worship Athena and Hephaestus from where you were from, and you'd worship whoever the new local gods were. Right. So if you've got a cosmopolitan city like Athens, where you have travelers coming in from all over the world, right? They would have shrines to all these different gods from all these different places for travelers from those places to come and sacrifice. And then they had this catch-all one, right? The God we don't know about, right? So if you couldn't find yours, you could go there, right?
It covers the basis. Perfect.
Right. And so St. Paul just uses that as like a launching off point sermon illustration, right? To say, yes, I'm here to talk to you about the God you don't know about. Right. And that's where the connection to that inscription ends. He uses it as a jumping off point. Right. That's like if I start a homily by saying, I saw this TV show this week. Right? Like, I'm not saying that TV show is like canonical or part of Orthodox tradition or something, or making any theological point about whatsoever. I'm using it as a jumping off point for what I'm going to say. Right. And then St. Paul proceeds in Acts 17 to teach them about a very different type of God than any God they had ever considered before. Right. He's not trying to say, oh, yes, add this one to your list.
Yeah.
That's the exact opposite of what St. Paul is trying to say. And he's not trying to say what, like Athena or Hephaestus or one of those other ones is actually the same God as the God of Israel. Right. So I could see trying to use that and failing miserably with the Hindus. I don't know how that would even work with the Muslims. If I was going to try and do that with the Muslims, I'd use more like Saint Fotini, the Samaritan woman at the well, where Christ says, you worship who you do not know, and we worship who we know, and try and say, well, the Muslims are worshiping the true God. They just don't know him. I try and play that thing. I'm steel manning here. That's the best argument I could come up with. It's not good, but it's the best one I can come up with, right? And even that doesn't work because Islam is post-Christianity.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas Christ is there referring to the Samaritan pre-Christian tradition.
Well, what they try to do, because I don't know if you're familiar too much with the channel, but I was doing a bunch of Vatican II debates not that long ago. Well, at this point, maybe it was like 6 months ago. So I guess it was in YouTube terms, that might be a long time ago. But I debated Dr. Trent Doherty, that Catholic linguistics scholar guy, on this subject. I debated a couple of different people, but in that particular debate, it was I mean, you kind of just see the absurdity of the position, because you get them to affirm, say, well, if it's the same referent, what's the line of delineation? He's like, there is no line. Like, it's, you know, like everybody kind of worship the same God at the end of it. It was basically where we got to, because he was like, well, the Hindus worship the same God. He said the Zoroastrians worship the same God. The Muslims worship the same God. The Jews worship the same God, so on and so forth. Even, you know, after, and he's like, even if they reject Christ explicitly, they still worship the same. So at the end of it, you get to the end. It's like, well, what's the line of delineation? There isn't one. It's just like kind of everybody's kind of doing their own thing. But the line of reasoning that I give them often in these debates, which I'm holding off on debates for obvious reasons now, but probably not.
No, which is good. The position you've taken with the channel and stuff is very respectable.
I would like to try to be responsible with the This guy says Dr. Trent did amazing. Did you watch? Did you watch the debate? He literally. So I don't know if you saw. Did you see the debate?
I didn't. No, I didn't.
It got to the point where he got so angry, and I was being very nice. I'm not a mean debater. I say things very plainly, straightforward. I don't get like frustrated. But I made a statement about his debate partner because we're talking about ecumenism within Vatican II, and I was like, well, the fruits of radical ecumenism is he literally picked a debate partner that changed his name mid debate to bisexual atheist. So I just pointed out that he changed. I'm like you are defending your doctrine, Vatican II, with a guy that his name is literally bisexual atheist right now. These are the fruits of radical ecumenism, and he's freaks out. He starts cursing me out, saying I'm not a Christian, cursing at me while calling me not a Christian. So that was how the debate ended up. So if you think that was an excellent debate ending, I don't.
Well, I mean, if we're grading it on entertainment value.
Yeah. There you go. That was the most entertaining debate for sure.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't know why I'm fuzzing out here on the camera. That's interesting.
It was too entertaining. It just
I look like an actress in one of those 50s romantic movies, right, with the soft lighting and the.
The argument though. So they get to the same referent. They're like, oh, it's the same referent. It's the same referent. Okay, well, his analogy is something like this. This is what he used. He said, well, you have Clark Kent, you have Superman. So if when he's got the glasses on
already, okay,
glasses off, right? So he was like, well, it's the same person whether or not he's got the glasses on or glasses off. I'm like, yeah, but what if he goes up to Lois and he's takes the glasses off or whatever, puts on the super suit? She says, oh, actually, I was thinking about Bizarro, because that's more the case with the Muslims, right? It's not well, like
so what God is like disguising himself as like Vishnu.
Yeah, that's like the
Diwali or something. Like what?
Yeah. But
wow.
That was a mess.
It's fascinating too, because it's like the ultimate colonialism. Like you're going to India and Pakistan and be like, no, you guys actually worship my God.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know it, you deny it, but it's true.
Yeah. Did you see the recent? I know I want to wrap up here in a moment, but did you see that recent? We'll have to do this again. This was really fun.
Yeah.
Love to have you back on the show at some point. But there was a recent document that was released by the Vatican, dicastery for whatever, was saying something along the lines of they were congratulating the Hindus on their Diwali festival or something. Yeah. And they were like you're like earnest worship for God, capital G.
Yeah.
In this, and it says at the top, in the spirit of Nostra Aetate. Which I like. You're trying to tell me that Vatican II extends to the Hindus worship the same God too. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. They got to send somebody to Pakistan. They've been killing each other over nothing.
Yeah, you're telling it's the same guy. This is a misunderstanding,
The Catholics can straighten all this out. Right?
Yeah, that's it. Well, don't you know, we gotta this. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll say it anyway. I feel like with this papacy in particular, it's almost like very accelerationist. I feel like I see a new crazy statement every single week. Have you noticed that, or is it just me?
Yeah, it's so I'm like I said, I'm in a 70% Roman Catholic area. We're getting lots of young Roman Catholic families who just like want to go to church,
Yeah.
That's and follow Christ, and they don't understand what's happening, and they want something that's not going to change anytime soon, let alone week to week.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing. I mean, I was aware of how bad things were getting. Like we talked about William Lane Craig and Protestantism. Like 10 years ago, I was saying that within 50 years, the Orthodox Church would be the only church that still affirmed the Nicene Creed. Yeah. And I thought the Catholics would probably be the last holdout, at least with their version, but now I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's honestly, it's getting kind of scary in my opinion, because I'm like, I'm looking at, I don't know, because for me, even seeing like, I have disagreements with Roman Catholics. I just feel bad for a lot of them, to be honest. Like
I
especially
have
like
compassion for the people.
yes,
It's the institution that's collapsing and doing them wrong and abusing them.
absolutely. I see guys that, you know, I like Timothy Gordon having to sit there and you know, defend the stuff, or like Anthony Stein. I see him on X. I actually like Anthony Stein's show, but it'll be like, this is apostasy, like, you know, talking about what Pope Leo said. And I'm like, okay, I comment, I'm like, Anthony, if this is apostasy, what's the play? You know, when
Yeah.
are, you know, are you getting aboard the ark or what? You know, that's just kind of like where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, true story. The way I discovered your channel is from Ferris going after you on how to be Christian.
Oh yeah, that was a wild.
And then I found out you became Orthodox. But that's how I found out, because I love that guy. He's hysterical, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like, I appreciate how you're dismantling Protestant stuff with the Bible, but like you're leading them into this institution that's collapsing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. You know what's funny about the Ferris thing? That the how to be Christian
yeah.
response video that he did with me and Kelly Powers was I didn't disagree with any of it. So there was no debate to be had. Well, it all stemmed back.
Well, he posted a follow-up aimed at you.
Yeah.
And everybody was immediately posting like, man, he's becoming Orthodox now. Like,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure he agrees with you at this point.
Yeah, well, so the story behind that was 6 months prior to that video that he posted. I challenged him to a live debate, and he sat in the live chat. He didn't come up, and he wouldn't debate.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
That's subject. What he posted in the
Yeah, I don't remember what the subject was, but I think it had to do with. I think
James
it was
2. It was his reading of James 2.
No, that was what he was going after Kelly for, because I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't ever use that argument. He just included me in that same video.
Oh, he just put you in lumped.
Yeah, I don't know why. I commented on there. I was like, I don't disagree with you. What do you mean? So, but anyway, yeah, he put me in the thumbnail of that video, and then at the very end, I even said in the comments, I was like, I don't disagree with what you're saying in the video. He's like, oh no, what I'm debunking you about is that I won't debate or something. So that was all that he was saying. He was debunking me on, was that he wouldn't debate or something. He's like, because debating is actually making videos, and it doesn't have to be a live thing. Because he sat in the live chat, and I was like, come and debate me, man. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, we'll have a conversation. I'm not mean.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I can.
You're not like me. Yeah.
I'm not a mean guy, you know. So we can have a chat. But I don't know. That guy had a meltdown on X. He tweeted me like 60 times back to back. And I'm like, hey, listen, dude, like, if you don't want to have a conversation, like, I'm just gonna have to block you at this point. So I blocked him. And 6 months later, he makes a video. I have no idea, like, even what it was about. So I was like, I'm just gonna ignore it or whatever. And he posted.
What was funny was people posted that you were joining the Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, well, good. That's a step in the right direction. And then all the Catholics started coming after him for saying that.
Yeah.
We're like, no, they're evil schismatics. No.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll say this, Ferris, if you're watching this, God bless you, man. I hope I hope the best for you and your family. You know,
I think your channel's hysterical.
Yeah.
That's the only Roman Catholic apologetics channel I ever watch, just because I think it's entertaining, and
he's got good editing skills, that guy.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And it's funny watching certain Protestants respond to him, because he'll just go through the Bible and then they'll be like, well, Council of Trent, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I didn't bring any of that up. Like, I was talking about the Bible.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, anything you want to plug before we wrap up here?
People know how to find my stuff and buy my books and stuff if they want to. So my Twitch stream, you know, you can find it if you want to. It's linked off my YouTube channel, which is where I post the VODs. So
there you go. So go check them out. And thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for coming on the show. If y'all are interested, I guess I'll plug a couple of things here while I have you here. The audience. So let me check my schedule real quick. So the next stream that I'm going to have will be on the 31st. Father Hears is going to come on the show. That stream will start at 8:30. So that'll be on Friday. So we're going to do a Q&A stream.
Spooky Halloween stream?
Yeah, spooky Halloween stream. I'll dress up like Martin Luther. No, I'm just
Yeah, get a poster of Vincent Price in the background or something.
yeah. No, but so we'll be doing a stream on the 31st with Father Hears, and then tomorrow I'm actually going to be filming a debunk myself video. So I'm finally going to start that series. I'll have Christian, Mario, and Luigi will probably be on that stream. I don't know if Luigi's joining us. At least Mario will be there. But I'm going to look at my stream that I did with Shooping and pick that apart. So that'll be interesting. That'll be a good first starting point. And then I figure maybe I'll go through some of the shorts or something in a separate thing. But that one will be a pre-recorded video. So I'll publish that whenever I'm done editing it up. So, but I'll be working on that tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Y'all have a good night. God bless.